everybody? Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, and look who is joining us live, the official draft analyst of Purple Insider, and now the owner-operator of DraftGuidebook.com, Chris Trapasso, launching the new website, which is awesome, and people need to check it out. Years of your draft analysis, your grades, your breakdowns. The website looks incredible. There's a very cool search function where you can go back and look at all sorts of different stuff. So I'm super happy for you to have launched that. And buddy, we got a lot to talk about here tonight, which is why I wanted to go live, because we've got Geno Smith news to react to. We've got this very interesting idea that Daniel Jeremiyah threw out there yesterday, kind of at random, regarding the Minnesota Vikings. We've got draft implications across the league. So, hi, Chris. How we doing?
Yeah, it's like we're in the throes of NFL free agency in day 2, but everything can be spun to the NFL draft. And without the Vikings making a litany of acquisitions, obviously they need to get under that cap before tomorrow's start of the new league year. I think it makes sense to be looking forward to the NFL draft. And very quickly, thank you so much for the plug. It's Draft Gradebook, not Guidebook.
What did I say?
Which you said Guidebook, I think, but just wanted to get it out there. Which actually it works out, because in the time that you said it, and then for me correcting it, more people joined this live chat. So Draft Gradebook, it's all my over 1,500 scouting reports from 2021, which ironically, I believe that's the year that I first started coming on this show. So all of my scouting reports, skill and talent grades, final grades, similar prospects. There's an AI search, there's a horizontal board, and I will have a draft mode on draft weekend. I haven't released that yet. Obviously, it wouldn't make sense to do that yet, but go to that, not just to see my archive, but also I'm adding in as many prospects as possible for this 2026 class currently. I think I'm going to drop like 5 to 15 new prospects every Monday and Wednesday, as many as I can watch while I'm not doing this show. And yeah, let's talk 2026 draft here on the second day of free agency.
Absolutely. My apologies. DraftGradebook.com.
Yeah. All right.
Look, we got to talk about Geno Smith, though, first, before we get into the implications of the Vikings doing nothing. But a lot of other teams did stuff, which all is going to matter for how the draft board falls before number 18. But what did you make of the New York Jets and this decision to trade for Geno Smith? Now, clearly, they only moved a couple of slots in the draft. It wasn't like some sort of epic blockbuster. And I guess credit to the Las Vegas Raiders for getting even the tiniest sliver of value for Geno Smith rather than just eating every bit of his contract. But the obvious way to read this, Chris, is that the New York Jets were concerned that certain teams, whether it be Pittsburgh or the Minnesota Vikings, would have been able to make a pretty compelling argument to Geno Smith to become their quarterback. And they said, you know what? We don't really want to risk that. Now, Geno, in his public statement so far, text to insiders and stuff like that, has made it sound like he was cool with it. He was already out there in New York doing his physical when they officially made the trade all set. But you don't do this if you're the Jets, if you were fully convinced that you were going to get Geno Smith. Otherwise, you would have just signed him for $1.3 million.
Yeah, I think with a few other teams, the Vikings included, still in that bridge veteran quarterback market. Maybe this is the Jets saying, well, we want that bridge quarterback. We don't, they were clearly concerned about one of those teams scooping in and saying, and probably being pretty honest with themselves, saying, yeah, we're not necessarily the most attractive team for someone like Geno Smith to ultimately just decide on his own accord to sign with. So let's trade for him. It was weird that I think today or maybe late last night, the Arizona Cardinals signed Gardner Minshew. Like they made him a early free agent signing. And I know what you're trying to get into with this, that this is leading to all signs pointing to Kyler Murray. Like, how many more opportunities or places do you have that can say, yeah, you're going to be the starter if you sign with us beyond the Minnesota Vikings? I think it's an absolute home run for both sides, and we can get into it. But after this, I didn't think we would ever get to this point, but Geno Smith domino, after that has fallen, everything is aligning for this Kyler to the Vikings to happen.
Well, I definitely want to get your take in how Kyler fits, expectations, what it would mean for JJ McCarthy, because you're right. I mean, I saw Josh Weinfuss, who has covered Kyler in Arizona for quite some time. He said on Twitter right after this happened, like, yep, the stars are continuing to align. Now, what's been reported for Kyler Murray that he's going to do is he is going to, when he's officially released, talk with each of the teams that are interested in him, which I think we could pretty easily guess the list now. I mean, Cleveland is going to want to try everything Cleveland can. I don't see any reason for him to sign there, but they should be at least asking, pretty please, is there any chance that you could come to Cleveland? And really, though, the only other team that could make an argument that they could be a competing team, and they don't have a former 10th overall draft pick in their quarterback room, would be the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when Aaron Rodgers comes out and says, yeah, I haven't gotten an offer from the Steelers yet. And I know that Rodgers isn't always the most reliable source on Aaron Rodgers, but I tend to believe him that the Pittsburgh Steelers have probably not said, here's what your offer is, because they need to look at all of their potential options as well, including maybe even Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr coming out of retirement or whatever it might be. But the way that I think it's easy to interpret is that he's not going to have that many Zoom calls. There aren't going to be that many teams. And the only one that could sneak in there and be very surprising would be Indianapolis. I think that they can take the tag off of him. I'm not 100% sure. I saw someone say that and I was like, you could do that with a transition tag. I'm not 100% sure on that, but even they've been brought up numerous times about, like, if they can't get something settled with Daniel Jones, that they could also be an option for Kyler Murray. So is that I can't think of anybody else. How do those teams, even if let's just include Indy just because, how do those teams compare to the Vikings in your mind? Because for me, it seems like unless he really doesn't want to be in the room with another guy who was drafted high by the organization, it's pretty clear that the Vikings would be the best spot for Kyler Murray.
It is super clear. I think the Colts have somewhat of a legitimate candidacy, and this is going to sound silly, but I wonder if Kyler Murray will bring this up. The fact that the Vikings play in a dome and the Colts play in a dome, I think he would probably like that, because if you look at his splits between indoor games, outdoor games, they're like astronomically different. And obviously playing in Arizona since 2019, that's what he's used to, having that 72 degrees and no wind in every game. Beyond that, though, I'll harken it back to 2024 when we, for a long, long time, discussed, like, all right, of these quarterbacks, where would these teams, like, where would Drake May, where would Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix even, where would they want to land? And it truly was not because I am just on a Vikings podcast here. We're going to give it straight. It absolutely is the Minnesota Vikings. So I think, and if now that it's a new GM, for Rob Brzezinski to be able to say, look, yeah, I was here when we drafted JJ McCarthy, but it's a new GM, and we want you to be the starter. We want to kind of rekindle that Sam Darnold magic of bridge starter turns into 14-game winner right away. I don't see, and I can't imagine that the money is any bit of a factor because of how much money he's getting from Arizona. So it really will be one of those rare, like, money's not any type of object for this player. It has to be Minnesota in terms of the overall situation from everything that I laid out. I don't know how, maybe Pittsburgh. I don't know how Cleveland can really be in the running, but I think with Pittsburgh, the expectations for that organization are so high, and you will play in a lot of bad weather games late in the season. So I understand Kyler Murray for the first time, like, hey, I can test the market without any money concerns, but it's almost like a formality, I guess, to me, that it should be the Minnesota Vikings, because it's not like at the combine when you talk to KOC that he was like, hey, we feel really good about JJ. Like, it was more like, we want it. We need to bring in a veteran. And all of the public comments from the GM and KOC were more leaning toward like, JJ McCarthy needs to have like the greatest offseason of his life to even have a chance to start in 2026. So I think Kyler Murray needs to land in Minnesota, and ultimately will.
I did double check on that. You can rescind the transition tag. So if Daniel Jones is being, I don't know, way too difficult when it comes to figuring out a contract extension, which there was an Albert Breer report that he was looking for $50 million a year. Look, I mean, you can look for whatever you want, but absolutely nobody is giving Daniel Jones $50 million a year. And I think that if you're Indianapolis, Daniel Jones is also, for that leadership group, a success story in terms of the coach, in terms of the general manager, and getting him in there and the way that he fit in their offense. They bring back his deep threat in Alec Pierce, but they moved on from his possession wide receiver in Michael Pittman, which is not what I would be doing if I was getting Kyler Murray. The more tape that I watch from Kyler Murray, the more times I think this guy with a 10-yard kind of hitch route or an in-breaking route at 10 yards or some one where you go and you find a spot in the zone and turn around and catch the ball. He's great at those. When it comes to actually driving the football down the field, I'm not sure that that's exactly what you're looking for in comparison of Daniel Jones. And we'll talk about some of those things with Kyler Murray and the fit potentially with the Vikings, but I think that Jones is exactly who they want in Indianapolis. I mean, they might be compelled, though, by the idea of $1.3 million, and then there's still talent on the free agent market that you could go out and spend on and get if Daniel Jones couldn't work something out. And then he becomes a potential option for the Vikings, which may be why they haven't spent it all, because they don't know how these dominoes are going to fall. The comparison to Pittsburgh, though, I think that Pittsburgh is a good team, a good franchise overall. You know that they're going to be successful every year in some regard, like over 500, as long as Tomlin was there. Mike McCarthy is a total X factor here, though, because in some ways you look at his resume and go, well, you know, Aaron Rodgers really fell off at the end of the time with McCarthy there. But then Dak Prescott led some great offenses while he was with the Dallas Cowboys. So you have these two guys who are offensive coaches. KOC has a real reputation for connecting with his quarterbacks, connecting with his players that I think Kyler Murray might want. But also, you know, that franchise in Pittsburgh, it has a great history and now has a coach that's been, at least in the playoffs, time and time and time again. I don't know that it's a deadlock that you would say it. And I mean, I think the Vikings have a little bit more in terms of offensive line talent, but it may be more of a closer than everyone's made it out to be. I feel like Pittsburgh has barely even been talked about in the Kyler Murray sweepstakes. And he has been a guy that I think keeps to himself here and doesn't exactly tell everybody in his entire circle and have it get out what he wants to do. So I mean, while I agree with you that I think it's the best fit and I think it's the best team offensively and I think it's the best coaching staff possible for Kyler Murray, I'm not going to count the eggs until the Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter tweet comes down that he's actually joining the Vikings.
Yeah, I think it will have to be a full court press from the Pittsburgh Steelers organization to sell Kyler Murray on what they can offer as an organization. And to me, I think everything that you outlined is correct. Like, we know the Steelers, the stability that, you know, very minimal new coaches, is the fourth new coach since Chuck Noll, whatever, since the late 60s. But I feel like a lot of that, like, I'm not going to say that someone that's as young as Kyler Murray is, like, wouldn't care about that. But, like, do you get what I mean? That it's like kind of, hey, like, it would be like, I don't know, like saying, oh, well, our second on our, like, at the top of our resume is like, we're really stable. And it's like, okay, like, but I don't really care about what happened in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s with Bill Cowher and Chuck Noll and then Mike Tomlin. Like, what does your team offer me right now? And to me, if I was Kyler Murray, I would be, sure, meet with Pittsburgh, see if they can just totally do a 180 on me. But I think in the dome in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson and Hawkinson, KOC, that offensive line. And I think too, this might be, I mean, maybe he would get this in Pittsburgh after playing as kind of like the team in the shadow in the NFC West in Arizona. I wonder if Kyler Murray would like to be in what has become like one of the most high profile divisions, like not just because of the history, but in the NFC North with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, the Lions resurgence. It seems like this would be the right decision in terms of upping his profile as a former number 1 overall pick who went to Arizona, not exactly a team that's on prime time 7 times a year.
Well, they're truly one of the worst franchises in the entire NFL. I mean, if you were just ranking them from 32 to 1, you're starting with the Cleveland Browns. You don't have to go far before you
Agreed.
get to Arizona, from what people there, the players, think of their ownership to their history of failure. Well, and how about, I mean, their coaching, well, he was there, Cliff Kingsbury, and then Drew Petzing and Jonathan Gannon. Well, I think that Petzing and Gannon did a decent job with what they had. They were there for 3 years. They got fired. Kingsbury got fired and then goes and is an offensive coordinator for Washington, has some success. The very next year he's out. I mean, it's hard to compare that to, and I know that some people in Vikings land think that Kevin O'Connell has no idea what he's doing. And I guess there's always going to be fans who think that of their team's coach, but his resume is a lot more impressive as a Super Bowl champion offensive coordinator for Sean McVay, and having had success stories with multiple different starting quarterbacks. I brought this stat up a few times, Chris, but when either Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold was starting for KOC, he's 31-11 in the regular season. And hey, can he win the Super Bowl? Can he get them over the hump? Like that is a different conversation. There's a lot of success when you have a baseline level of quarterback play, which I think Kyler Murray can give them. Where I think there's a little bit of a misnomer about Murray is that he would not fit in their offense. And this is sort of so you haven't really watched Kyler Murray play, because here's where I would agree. He would not fit in the 2024 version of the Vikings offense, because that was Sam Darnold using that absolute howitzer of a right arm to throw rockets down the field over linebackers, dropping it in over the top to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. It was insane, because he has one of the best arms in the NFL. This would be much more like when Kirk was the quarterback, where it is a lot of completions. So I've been watching back his 5 games from 2025, and he has, if you remove the drops, the 4th highest completion percentage of any quarterback adjusted for drops in the NFL. And a lot of them are easy completions that he's making. It's not a lot of tight window. It's not a lot of 30 or 40 yards deep down the field, throwing it out there and letting your guy go get it. It's a lot of this guy gets into a window and he completes it with an accurate throw time and time again, which is very much how Kirk played, except for there's a play against Carolina where a free running linebacker comes right at him and he goes like this and he dodges him and then he runs right and then he runs around somebody else and he gains 30 yards on the ground. So if you gave Kirk rockets in his feet from 2023, that's kind of what this would look like. I think that it has the potential to have a lot of success. I think it has the potential also to be kind of mid. And with some of the injuries that Murray has had, there's a risk there as well. So, well, I like this better than any of the other options. And now that Geno's off the board, I mean, you're talking Murray, Kirk, Rodgers, and I know there are people who just, hey, why don't you just roll with JJ? Well, that's not what they're doing. I mean, it's clear that that's not what they're doing. So we have to live in the world of this is what they're going to do. It's hard from a Vikings perspective to see anything that even approaches the caliber of Kyler Murray for them next year.
100%. And I think you kind of took the words out of my mouth that I was going to mention. If you were to have just asked me, like, how do I think Kyler Murray fits? I was going to say, I think it will be an offense more tailored to the classic Kyle Shanahan based system that is pretty structured, gets the ball out of the hands of the quarterback in a hurry. And even though the name of Kyler Murray's offense in college under Lincoln Riley, air raid, you think, oh, bombing it down the field, that's a spread-based offense that wants its quarterbacks to make a quick decision, see the first read, get it out to its wide receivers in space, and then let them run after the catch. And I think early in his career, and then when he was with Cliff Kingsbury running that offense, that's when Kyler Murray was at his best. And then there's the occasional play action deep shot over the top that's schemed open where he knows, okay, this is going to be a post. I got to throw it right about here. Again, can't really drive the football a ton. But I do think, I'm not going to say that I totally disagree with you. I think he has a stronger arm than Kirk Cousins. I think he's like that weird type, and it's why he was a number 1 overall pick at his size, that he actually has a pretty good arm. Like you think at like 5'11" and 200 pounds, like he would have not an NFL caliber arm. I think because of the baseball background and just how much inherent talent Kyler Murray has, there are times where if you do need that patented Shanahan KOC deep dig over the middle on 3rd and 12, and you're going to throw a 15-yard dig, he can step into that throw every once in a while. But I do think the times where Kyler Murray has gotten into trouble in Arizona and was playing kind of mid was when he had to hold the football too long and kind of looked like Mario running around there trying to make things happen. I love the idea, and this is not, I'm not cherry picking this situation now. I've said this for 5 years on this show. I want to see a highly mobile quarterback in this Shanahan-McVay KOC system. There hasn't been one. There almost was one with Trey Lance, and then we know how that turned out. I want to see beyond the bootlegs. I want to see, and I'm sure KOC would welcome the challenge of what like back portion of my playbook that is dusty, that has cobwebs in it that we've never opened, can we now open and insert into the offense? Like the quarterback designed run game. I don't think that's how Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, and Sean McVay want to utilize it, but I do think KOC is smart enough as a former quarterback to continue to evolve, and he's just never had a quarterback that's given him that. I think there's actually like hidden upside with Kyler Murray in this offense beyond what I think would be tailor-made for him to make those quick decisions in more of a spread offense.
And one of the things that he did with Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold had mobility in a certain way. He did not have mobility like Kyler Murray, as you said, whoa, like all over the world, but he did use a lot of rollouts. And this was also utilized by Clint Kubiak a lot. And what I noticed watching back the film is that was something that Drew Petzing would pull out pretty often. And when I see people say he's not under center, it's like, that's just not true. He's not under center all the time. And I don't think KOC is a big fan of the pistol, so I'm not sure you're going to see that like you did sometimes in Arizona, but he absolutely lined up under center and ran traditional bootlegs where the tight end comes underneath and then there's deep crossers. My issue is not exactly that he can throw with the velocity, because he can create the velocity. It's a lot of he will turn down a throw that's into a little bit of a tight window over the middle where he would have to tune it up a little bit and throw it as hard as he can to scramble or check down, probably more times than I would like when I'm watching his film. And then there's sometimes that it's a little odd because in 2021, the deeper balls, 30 yards and beyond, I felt like he would have a lower trajectory, more of a line drive. Whereas when I was watching him this last year, there were more pop flies and floating balls, and some of them were complete, but you were like, I don't know, should you have kind of let that one go? And I wondered about, is it maybe the ACL and he was dealing with a foot injury? It's a lot harder to drive into the ground for someone of that size. You mentioned baseball. Well, if you're a shortstop, you are creating a lot of that power from your lower half. And there were some throws where he did let it rip and he threw it high or a little inaccurate. And I was like, I'm just wondering about the health there for last year, which is an issue. And when he plays under pressure, just look to the sky and pray, because he either will do the most awesome thing you've ever seen under pressure. And there's a game against Carolina that I just finished up watching, so it's fresh in my mind. He has that crazy 30-yard run, which is amazing. And then later in the game, they're ahead. All they need is a field goal and you're good. And he tries to do something that's way too much, ends up getting the ball batted, turns into an interception, gives Carolina another chance. Like, you can't do that all the time. And so this is where I always come to. This is not a perfect quarterback. This is not Lamar Jackson that you're getting. It's not going to be somebody that ranks by PFF the number 3 quarterback in the NFL if he plays an entire season for the Vikings. But what I do think he does is give them a certain level where you can win a lot of football games if those other things are right. And this is a great transition into our next subject, but I want to ask you one question before that, because I want to get into the running back position, which is just Jordan Mason all by his lonely there in the backfield with Zay Scott. I don't want to forget Zay Scott, pride of New Hampshire. But when it comes to JJ McCarthy and his future, I have been making the argument that I can't think of a better thing for JJ McCarthy than to develop for an entire year, to be healthy, to have every practice, after practice, film study, in the room, get another veteran quarterback in there as well, and just focus on getting better every single day without the pressure, without the internet mockery of every single thing you do, which I think for somebody who's 30 is tough, but for someone who's 21, 22, getting their first chance ever, and you've gone from being the guy that everyone loves to now the guy that everyone is just making fun of mercilessly every single Sunday. I think that was emotionally very, very difficult for him. I have seen this too many times of quarterbacks coming off the field, watching from the sideline, developing themselves, and then going back and having success. I've just seen it so many times that I think it's the best possible direction for him. Do you think that?
I agree. And that I think the most important point, you can go very granular with all the things that he could do to learn from whoever this veteran quarterback ultimately is. But I think the operative term is no pressure. To almost like, maybe, I don't know if they would say it publicly, but be like, JJ, you're not going to start this year. We want you to be in a legitimate quarterback competition next year and earn it, beat out the veteran that we sign, or I guess they're not going to draft someone, but have your sights set on 2027. That absolutely is the best case scenario. And if in 27, if we're going to look that far ahead, if he looks like he's taken the step, he either becomes your guy and it just happened a few years too late, or he looks great and you have Kyler Murray is just the guy and you trade JJ McCarthy and you get probably a day 2 or day 3 pick for him. I think at that point, that would be the best outcome. Last thing I'll say before we get into running backs, everything that you outlined about Kyler Murray in the system, where, his weaknesses, it's different because he's a different athlete and he's not the exact same quarterback as Sam Darnold. But what I was going to say is, Kyler Murray needs the Vikings. He needs KOC, just like Darnold had a lot of these silly mistakes. And I remember coming on here and I was like, I think he could be good, but I think eventually in 24, some of those bad habits will rear their ugly head and he'll have some bad turnovers. Now, it happened way later than I thought. And I will ultimately say I was way wrong on Sam Darnold. But obviously in the game against the Lions and in the playoff game, obviously all the Vikings fans remember that. He did show, though, he is the ultimate resume builder to me for Kevin O'Connell. And if you're Kyler Murray, now I'm sure you have a reasonably sized ego. You're confident in your abilities, but in terms of the weaknesses that you outlined, that you hinted at about bad decisions and reversing your field and taking the sack or getting it a throw batted down, he needs that structure. I don't even think he necessarily needed his college coach in Cliff Kingsbury to just give him the same offense, play like you did at Oklahoma. He needs someone that's like, okay, it's 3rd and 7, or it's 3rd and 11. We're in field goal range. If the first read's not there, check it down, or even take a sack, or run back to the line of scrimmage, throw it away, whatever. That's how Kyler Murray, I think, can actually become Sam Darnold 2.0, because that's what Darnold needed. He needed some of that decision-making coaching. So that, again, is another reason why I think it makes so much sense. It's not just that the Vikings need Murray, he needs the Vikings.
And you would be surprised at, even though he is volatile because of his performance under pressure, he, in terms of interception percentage and sack percentage, is much more of a top third of the league type of player. And that could be, and this goes for his completion percentage too. Like when you're throwing safer balls underneath a lot and then trying to make something special happen occasionally. But when you look at how Brian Flores' defense has performed, if you can stay on the field and have some longer drives and have completions and play with some rhythm and so forth, I mean, that could work out really well for you, because Brian Flores' defense is very, very good on the other side. So it's not like you're asking him to score 30 points a game, although they did lose their punter, Ryan Wright, Chris, which is going to be a problem when it comes to controlling. I'm not even kidding, because he was so good last year when it comes to controlling the football. Let's do this right before, I promise we're going to get to Jeremiyah Love. But so let's do a little flow chart here. Okay, Kyler goes to the Vikings, then we're all set, and whoever the other quarterbacks go to is someone else's problem. If Kyler does not choose the Vikings, what are their best options after that? So the reason it's kind of a flow chart is because you have to answer like, well, does Daniel Jones stay with Indianapolis? Or, does Aaron Rodgers even want to play? So just give me your best options. Don't worry about the other dominoes that would have to fall. If it's not Kyler, if you were in the Vikings front office, how would you rank? If you were just making your board of here's our other quarterback options, we can go Geno Smith off the list. He's not going to be here. Marcus Mariota off the list. He returned to Washington. What is your list?
I think unless there's a quarterback that I'm blatantly forgetting about, it's going to sound, I mean, either answer has like weird, what's the word? Like caveat to it that I think it's either Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins. I don't hate, I think almost the quarterback 3 that I would insert would be trading for Anthony Richardson. I think he's very, very fascinating, but he's not someone that you're like, hey, you're the starter, JJ, you're on the bench. Like that's obviously wouldn't be the case. So it would really be those two, unless there's someone that I'm totally forgetting. And I think ironically, this late in their careers, there were stretches where Aaron Rodgers did play competent football last season. And late in the year in Atlanta, when I had zero expectations for Kirk Cousins after the Michael Penix injury, I would watch some of those Falcons games back and I was like, oh, that looks like Kirk Cousins back on the Vikings. Like he certainly cannot move whatsoever. But I think for as weird as that would be, and maybe that would be hyper ironic that Geno Smith back to the Jets, Kirk Cousins back to the Vikings, I think either of those two, they could have landed in this flow chart at a worse situation if it's not Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins. But I think those two beyond Kyler Murray would actually be passable at this stage of the game for the Vikings.
The list for me would have to be, I think you're calling to see if Derek Carr is serious about coming out of retirement, which I know feels very bleak. Like, how can you make an argument that that's going to work? But when you look at Derek Carr's most recent performance and his career, you could certainly squint and say, yeah, they could win a lot of football games with him if he's even remotely what he's been during his career. And then he gets Justin Jefferson. But I still think that the ceiling with Derek Carr is probably like 9 wins. That's the other thing is, as much as, and I've been fighting this fight for an entire month, there isn't a single person that could argue that there's another quarterback that has a higher ceiling to where if it clicked and it all worked, that you could win more games than with Kyler Murray. That's available. I mean, sometimes when I talk about this idea, it feels like, oh, do you guys have someone that I haven't heard of? Do you have like a secret quarterback? Like somebody brought up, no disrespect, like Tanner McKee. Tanner McKee may someday be a starter in the NFL, but like, please be serious. Like this team is looking for, with a veteran team and a bunch of talent and a $6 million defensive coordinator that they just brought back, to win a lot of football games. The Wilfs didn't spend all this money to build this team and bring back these coaches and everything to just screw around with somebody else's backup who was drafted in the 7th round. So they're going to get a real quarterback. And they also didn't do it to put all their eggs in the basket of a quarterback who had one of the worst runs of their first 10 starts ever for a first-round quarterback that was not drafted in the top 5. So again, like, please be serious with the list that we have. Aaron Rodgers to me would be insane. It would just like, how is this real? How is this real life? How is this happening? This is Favre again. I don't see the ceiling being particularly high there because of the way he played in Pittsburgh. There was a few games that were breathtaking. Most of it was him just trying not to get hurt. And if you can't even have your own tackle bump into you without getting really mad that you were knocked down, like you're probably in your 40s and everything hurts. With Kirk, we know what the ceiling is. There was a ceiling when Kirk was good. So we know what that is. And then the other option being Daniel Jones, which I think if you really put his performance under review for Indianapolis last year, it's good, but it's not something that I think is like, this is their franchise quarterback, which you would probably have to pay him a significant amount of money, way over $1.3 million for Kyler Murray. So everything to me does come together, but now the ball is in Mr. Murray's court. Here's what we know though, Chris. If the Vikings get Kyler Murray, Randall Cunningham, Jeff George, Case Keenum, Brooks Bollinger, it doesn't matter if they don't have a supporting cast, which includes a successful run game. I watched running back after running back after running back go off the board in free agency. There's a couple left as we speak. But I think the Vikings need more talent in the backfield, even if they were to bring in a Rashad White or someone like that. That's kind of a placeholder who's competent, but is not a game changer. Daniel Jeremiah goes on TV and says, you know what would be cool is if the Vikings traded up for Jeremiyah Love. Just giving you that sentence, what do you think of that idea?
Okay, there are two ways that I will answer this. One, strictly as a draft analyst, the sentence trade up for a running back.
Yeah.
Dude, that does not compute in my brain. Like, I would never advocate for any team in any situation to do that. Even with as good of a roster as the Vikings have on the offensive side, don't do it. The Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs, you are not a Clyde Edwards-Helaire away from being awesome again. They certainly won Super Bowls after that in spite of making that pick. Like, he did not help them win those Super Bowls subsequently. But I have softened somewhat on my idea, and I don't know if I've said this on this show. I've been on radio a lot this week, so they're kind of all getting blurred together. I've softened on my stance of never, ever, under any circumstances, draft a running back in the first round because the league's evolving and I need to evolve my own philosophies and evaluations of team building and positional value. I've watched Bijan Robinson. Now it has not turned into the Falcons even winning their own division, but he is a 1,600 to 2,200 yard from scrimmage player every year. Christian McCaffrey, even well into his late 20s, that same kind of guy. Now, Ashton Genty didn't ultimately work out last year. The offensive line was terrible. The Chip Kelly was an abomination there. The offensive line, what was Pete Carroll was like giving his son the offensive like the O-line coach job where like the blockers were like practicing by themselves because they didn't want to have to deal with all that because he wasn't a good coach. I just think that there is a little bit of you are getting this player in his prime. It's really unlike any other position if you draft a running back in the first round. And if you can get someone that is, like you said, ding, 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 explosive, you get that with Jeremiyah Love. If that's what your run game needs, and you look at the rest of the draft class at running back, not very good at all. It's pretty barren. And I will paraphrase a tweet that I saw from Todd McShay today that said, every GM in the NFL would rather have Jeremiyah Love on a rookie deal than pay Travis Etienne or Kenneth Walker those big veteran contracts that they got in free agency. And he was just like, hey, that's not a knock on Ken Walker or Travis Etienne, but he's absolutely 100% right. If someone were to say, would you trade up for a running back or pay a 27-year-old, 4 years, $52 million, whatever, I would say, well, okay, in that case, give me the young guy that has a lot of tread on his tires that can be your focal point of your offense and give you that explosiveness. So Jeremiyah Love is positioned very well to be a top 10 pick because he's really good, he's really explosive, and the running back class is kind of behind him.
What I'm curious about now is after the Saints invested big and after the Chiefs invested big, if we take a look at the draft board, so we know that the Raiders are going to draft Fernando Mendoza. The Jets have Breece Hall, not really in a position to draft a running back. The Arizona Cardinals just signed Tyler Algier. I don't think it would make any sense for them. They're tanking. They're also super bad. They're going to play Gardner Minshew and Jacoby Brissett, it seems. Ooh. What a competition that's going to be between those two. The Tennessee Titans are also in a position that I don't think they should be drafting a running back, but they're the
odds-on favorite right now.
Yeah,
like everyone is thinking that he could go as high as 4 to the Titans.
And also, what I've really learned over the years. Oh, sorry. I just hit the totally wrong button. It messed up the screen trying to catch my water bottle. What I've learned over the years is that ownerships have a lot more to do with what happens on the football field than you think. As we all sit here and play GM and draft sim and free agency sim and everything else, we forget that sometimes the phone call comes in from the yacht. You know what I really want is this. And the Tennessee Titans had a lot of success with Hoomst in the backfield Derrick Henry. And in their past, even going back farther, they spent a pretty high draft pick on who? That would be Eddie George, right? These are two of their franchise staples, and not to mention Chris Johnson in between. They've always had this amazing running back that they build their offenses around, and I think that matters. I was talking to, and you know Doug Whaley, former Bills GM, I was talking to him the other day for a story over at purpleinsider.football, and he was telling me when they were in Pittsburgh that the ownership had a very clear-cut idea of this is the type of player we want. This is the type of character. This is the type of toughness. And don't bring in anybody that isn't going to be a part of the Pittsburgh type of way of doing things, which, you know, I think that their boxes were a little ambiguous and probably not that hard to check, because if you're soft, you're not getting drafted that high anyway. But the point just being, ownership and the top of the franchise can have these ideas. So I wonder if Tennessee, no matter who's running them, is going to get the call, like, this is how we win in Tennessee with running backs. But if they pass, Chris, if they do not take Jeremiyah Love at the 4th overall pick, I mean, the Giants have Scadaboo coming back. They've got a decent enough backfield. The Cleveland Browns should not be doing that with Quinshon Judkins being drafted last year. Then who is it? Number 7 in Washington that would be the favorite if Tennessee does not decide to go with Jeremiyah Love?
It could be, and Jeremiyah Love would be an upgrade over most teams' number 1 running backs, but I would find that hilarious that a very analytics forward team in the Commanders that just got awesome value out of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a 7th rounder, would then turn around and go, oh, let's pick a running back inside the top 10. Like, I can't imagine that would be the way that the analytics would point them in that direction. I think if Jeremiyah Love gets past 4, and I cannot believe that we're talking about this, but it does make more sense if you're telling me that the Vikings need explosiveness and are just like, hey, we got our super cheap quarterback. Let's, like, not spend frivolously because you're not paying that running back a lot, but let's add a luxury to this offense that it's been missing for a long time. If he gets past 4, I think that opens the door for the Vikings to start making some calls, because, like you just ran through, I don't really know what other teams outside of the Commanders to a certain degree, maybe the Chiefs at 9, but they just signed Kenneth Walker.
Right,
so yeah,
right.
so that's totally out. I think they would start calling teams, or maybe position themselves before the draft to call those teams from the 6 range to like the 12 range and say, look, on draft night, if Jeremiyah Love is not picked by the Titans, we want to have deals in place with you to pick Jeremiyah Love.
Which, from a perspective of 2026, would be stupid fun. I mean, you'd be bringing in someone who is as talented as pretty much any running back to come out. You have to tell me where you would rank him in your grade book compared to Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, but at least from my eyeballs, it's not that far away in terms of the caliber of talent, and you can hit the ground running with this offense. Let's say it's Kyler Murray. That's a lot of explosiveness with Murray and Love and Jefferson and Addison. There's a lot to work with there. At the same time, I've said this a few times during the offseason, the franchise will go on after this, and it's great to have that player, but there's only so much impact that a running back can make over another running back. So, you know, you mentioned Kenneth Walker, and Kenneth Walker is playing his best football when he's got great blocking. When the Seattle Seahawks built this offensive line with Gray Zabel in there, who's one of the best run blocking guards right away in the NFL. And then all of a sudden, Kenneth Walker's having some of his best times, and Zach Charbonnet as well. I mean, that's what happens a lot of times, is it's dictated by what's going on in front of them. And Ashton Genty's another great example of this. I mean, I certainly think that the Vikings, with some of the people that they've added to their coaching staff, can succeed. And they have a good enough passing game and enough threats to get light boxes and deep safeties and all those things, as people are terrified of Justin Jefferson. I don't doubt that it's going to work. I just think that if you're looking at the longer term of the franchise, having a trade down to get more draft capital, to have more picks, to have more players on rookie contracts makes a lot more sense to me than it does to go all the way up. But I do want to say it would be fun as heck, and I think that they would have a chance to have a top 10 offense, even if their quarterback play was not perfect, if he's everything that he's supposed to be.
Yes, that is hitting the nail on the head. It wouldn't be the best way to allocate early draft capital, but it would be extremely fun. And maybe this would be a team that now suddenly is like, we're kind of more concerned with the short term as opposed to what's going to happen 7 years from now. I think that they were in that, which is so ironic that they went 14-3 afterward. But in 2024, they're like, all right, we drafted our quarterback. We're set up for the next 3 to 5 years. At least this guy's going to come in and it be serviceable. Didn't, got hurt. And then Darnold was great. And that it was like, now they obviously, and I think it probably led to Kwesi being fired. Like they made that decision. Let's move on and turn our attention to JJ McCarthy with the long view in mind. If you sign Kyler Murray for essentially nothing, trade up for Jordan Love, like what you just referenced, you're suddenly not really thinking about 27, 28, 29. We'll figure that out after. But this is suddenly a super explosive offense that has just a lot of athleticism, that is upgraded at running back and quarterback, two of the guys that touch the ball more than anyone else on that side of the football.
And all their other moves have kind of pointed toward 1 foot in, 1 foot out, which is they keep TJ Hawkinson, they keep Eric Wilson, but they're moving on from the older, expensive players who I think you'd be moving on from regardless. Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, and Aaron Jones. Maybe you'd be trying to keep those guys on different contracts if you loved how they played, but your salary cap situation was not in a spot to really go all in, and they've been a little safer with the restructures than they needed to be just to make sure they're cap compliant, and they could probably add a couple of free agents that are cheap. But if you're Kevin O'Connell, you might be pounding a table when it comes to this because his talent is so unique from what you'd be looking at the 18th overall pick. And that's what I wanted to get to with the Vikings not making any big moves. So even if they go out and they sign Nick Cross or they sign Rachaad White or they sign whatever, I don't think it precludes them from anything in the draft from where they're at. And when we start adding up the potential needs, we could get to running back, receiver, tight end with TJ Hawkinson redoing his contract to make him a free agent. I've tossed out the idea of Kenyon Sadiq. Center is something that they probably can't get in the first, but defensive tackle, if they trade Jonathan Grenard, edge rusher, and there's a lot of positions, Chris. Corner, safety, and punter. They need all of those things right now. So if we look at where they're at, I just pulled up a draft sim with all those needs in mind at 18. I mean, in this draft sim that I ran, Sadiq is off the board and Jeremiyah Love ends up going to the Saints anyway with ETN, which I guess could happen. I mean, they could still do something like that. But Sadiq ends up off the board, and we've got players like Cassius Howell, who I think you'd start to have to consider, Omar Cooper, Avion Terrell, who I've circled, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. But in this one, Dylan Thieneman is not on the list. Is it a trade down situation if some of those top guys are off the board? Also, Caleb Banks here, who is interesting because Caleb Banks, PFF loves him as a top 20 pick, and Daniel Jeremiah has him as like a second rounder. So I'm not sure exactly what to make of that either. But it feels like a position where you should be saying, let's move back and get as much draft capital as we possibly can.
So I guess the Vikings are kind of on polar ends. They're either trading up for a running back,
yes, right.
or because of all the points that you outlined and all the positions that they need to address, they can't do in free agency. There are so many needs. Like as you're listing them through, I'm going through, all right, yeah, there's Dylan Thieneman, there's all right, Kenyon Sadiq. If a lot of those players are gone, those premier players at those need spots, which is most of the defense, then absolutely the other polar end is trade back and make like 2 or 3, but make 3 or 4 picks on day 3 of the draft, or maybe just later in the first round. I would say I'm a huge Caleb Banks fan, and I think he would make a ton of sense for a team that, or an organization that has routinely had some ridiculous defensive tackles that have been star players that to go back. I mean, and I'm sure there's more that your fans know and but I think John Randall and they've seemingly had ridiculous play on the interior. Kevin Williams, God, there's so many that I don't know if that would be an organizational thing where to say, hey, pick the D tackle in the first round. But if Caleb Banks, Dylan Thieneman, Kenyon Sadiq, if either of those 3 are still there, I would be okay with that selection. But I do think the general thought of, all right, we don't know who's going to be there. It's either swinging for the fences or deciding to take the intentional walk and trading back. I think those pick and choose either end of the spectrum for the Vikings in the first round.
So let me ask you your opinions here, and then we'll get to the chat and other things that happened today. Elgton Jenkins, your dream died very quickly with him. He signed with the Cleveland Browns. Sorry, everyone. I think, you're a fan of Jenkins as well. I think he's a better guard than he is a center. So I'm not sure that would have been the best option for the Vikings anyway. But we could talk about that. So I've been poking around the FanDuel odds, Chris, with all these moves that have gone on. And one thing that I notice about the odds makers is that they don't get wowed by a lot of free agent spending. And let me tell you real quick that I saw some people who are enraged that the Vikings didn't spend. I thought we knew this. I thought we knew that they weren't going to. And I also thought we knew last year that they weren't going to be able to do that this year. So I'm not sure why people are acting totally shocked. Also, the players that they've spent on the last couple of years, a lot of them are still on the team, like Andrew Van Ginkel at this moment, Jonathan Grenard, Byron Murphy, etc. So anyway, not the point. I did look last year, and I found an article that did off-season grades for free agency that their number one team was the Washington Commanders, who are drafting in the top 10 now and had a lot of those free agency moves go bust. Look, it can work or not. I mean, New England was their second team and they made the Super Bowl, but it doesn't always the day one spending equate to a huge amount of success. So I noticed that the New York Jets, who went crazy, are plus 2,000 to win the AFC East. The Tennessee Titans, who spent a lot, are plus 900 to win the AFC South. The Las Vegas Raiders are plus 2,000 to win the AFC West, because it's just not going to happen for any of those teams that spend big. Is there a team, though, for you in the National Football League that you think, you know what, the stuff that they did actually does potentially move the needle? I mean, I think the obvious choice, I'll let you think for a second. The obvious choice might be Baltimore in trading for Max Crosby. Like if there's one player who could shift the needle, it might be him. Also, I think that the Carolina Panthers, who are now, they've actually moved up. They are now plus 410 to win the South. They're still in last place on FanDuel, but they've made it much closer after getting Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd. Who did you like for free agency?
There hasn't been a team, I think, because a lot of what you outlined, we're only like a day and a half in, that all these are the most expensive deals. Now it's for the best players, but I certainly remember throughout the years that it's a lot of these teams that are not good, that are just have a ton of money because they don't have good players on second and third contracts, that are giving out all that big, like all that big money. So I actually would like to answer that next week once we get to I don't know what we would call that, the second or third wave. But I will give you a loser. I actually think the Baltimore Ravens, to bring in Max Crosby at a pretty similar deal to Micah Parsons, was a little bit of an overpayment. But I do agree, yes, he is a huge needle mover. But they also lost their center in Tyler Linderbaum. They lost Draymond Jones, who's a good interior rusher. They lost both of their tight ends in Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar. It's a team that I think is not putting all their eggs in one basket, but for a team that's perennially been very good, it's like, yikes. Like they signed Alohi Gilman as their safety. Like that's it to me is like, it's a team that he left to go to the Chiefs. I'm sorry. Yeah. He left to go to the Chiefs. I was looking at the list wrong.
No disrespect for Alohi Gilman. Please. He was one of my top targets for the Vikings.
Yes, that in general, they've lost a lot, and not just tertiary players, and they've brought in Max Crosby. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, but they have the draft. They don't have a first rounder this year or a first rounder next year to bring in some of that talent that can be game changing. So to me, I don't have a true winner yet. I think Carolina that you outlined, they have a super expensive and veteran-laden defense now. Maybe they're just trying to get over that hump. They were so close to beating the Rams in that wild card round game. I've liked some of their moves, but I want to answer that next week when we see some of these lower tier but legitimately good value signings come in, because a lot of the Raiders, Titans, Jets that you've outlined, they just have like $100 million to spend, when the Vikings were going into free agency over the cap by like $40 million.
So the needle has moved ever so slightly. And if you're wondering, I think that FanDuel thinks the Vikings are getting Kyler Murray because they had been, since the Super Bowl, they'd been plus 700. Now they're plus 600 to win the NFC North on FanDuel. But the North is so close. Detroit plus 170, Green Bay plus 175, and Chicago is plus 360. And today we saw the Lions get Isaiah Pacheco. I think that's a bit of a downgrade from David Montgomery, who's been a really nice yin and yang for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think they're looking at pass protection probably there because it was such a failure last year against the Vikings. That game has to be in their head. Both of those games where Brian Flores ate them alive, in part because they didn't have a running back who could step up in pass protection, and Gibbs really struggled there. But the NFC North specifically, you talk about a team that's lost a lot of talent. I had a tweet. I don't know why I was just looking for the tweet, but I'm trying to remember who sent it out about the Packers. They lost like 12,000 snaps or something worth of, like, Elgton Jenkins and Kingsley Enagbare played a lot for them. They traded away Rashawn Gary. They've lost a lot of talent off of that team, especially on defense. They still have McKinney. They still have Micah Parsons, but it feels kind of a lot like you described with the Ravens. And I guess I didn't really think about it from a Ravens perspective of a complete team, more of they got one of the best players in the NFL who can drive a defense. But you're absolutely right to point out that they might be asking one guy to do so much, kind of like Green Bay last year when they lost Parsons, they just fell apart.
Yeah. Totally. And that's like the one concern, that if Max Crosby stays healthy, and he's had some injury concerns, but he also has played an insane amount of snaps. He wants to play like 100% of the snaps. So to trade for that at 28, 29 years old for 2 first-round picks, and then maybe that costs you signing or to retain some of these core pieces, and you don't have 2 first-rounders, like that's why I don't love it for the Ravens. I do think we will see a lot of quality signings that are a little bit more of a reasonable price over the next couple of days and into next week.
I totally agree. And my list last night, there's only been a couple guys checked off it since my list that last night. I felt pretty good about those guys in the second wave. And oftentimes that is where you get your better deals. Funny that last year, the Vikings' best signings turned out to be Eric Wilson and Isaiah Rodgers. Rodgers was a first day guy, but he was not an expensive guy. And neither was Eric Wilson, who they thought was going to be a special teamer. And then all of a sudden ends up turning out to be a huge player for them. So it's not always the day one signing that ends up turning out. And I'm just going to be skeptical. Now, I think the Raiders did a great job. If you're talking about a winner getting Linderbaum and then being serious, like there is value when you're drafting the number 1 quarterback and you're revamping your franchise, you've brought in a new head coach, to just being a serious team that each week, even if you win 7 or 8 games next year, each week teams can't just walk into Las Vegas and be like, that's a pretty easy win because this team has no idea what the hell they're doing. I also kind of like Kirk for Vegas. Do you like Kirk for Vegas to be?
I do.
Not just because he looks like Fernando Mendoza in the smile. I don't really get that, by the way. I don't really get the comps as much. I think it's because they both have like the same kind of smile and awkward personality.
Similar.
I don't really think that they're that similar. Mendoza is much taller. He's like 2 inches taller, like stands very tall in the pocket. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's because he's not a playmaker that everyone just says. I also think Kirk's more accurate than Fernando Mendoza. I think his anticipation and accuracy is much better. But we learned this from Mac Jones, that if you are not athletic and have to be a pocket quarterback, everyone will just say you're Kirk.
Yeah. That's like the new, like every team in quarterback purgatory was Andy Dalton. Like the guy that So I agree. Especially if you're a white pocket passer that doesn't have a strong arm, you're Kirk Cousins.
Yes, 100%. Chris Trapasso, draftgradebook.com. I go to the website, look at it. It's got so many of your scouting reports and it just looks great. You did an awesome job on it. And I hope that people go check it out. Draftgradebook.com. And every single week on this show, you will be here breaking down what it all means. We'll be doing more draft simulations as time goes by. The next time we talk, I'm expecting that the Vikings will have their answer at quarterback, which will help us out a lot. There could be some more free agent moves, which will help us out a lot for our next draft simulation. But we've got a lot still here to go leading up to the draft with you every single week. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much for your time, Chris.
Of course, football.
All right, let's get into your guys' thoughts, which I've been following during the show, and it hasn't been going well in the chat. So let's get it turned around. The Vikings haven't done a lot, friends. In fact, they've done almost nothing. Shout out to James Pierre, who is getting an entire day of conversation about James Pierre, a longtime development special teams fill-in type of corner for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I actually think is a really good signing for the Vikings when they're so short on depth, and he played great for the Steelers last year. So their one and only move I would give a thumbs up to so far, but what's on your mind? Geno Smith finds a home today. The options that remain, we should run through them first, then we'll get your thoughts in the chat. Get yourselves together. The options that remain are, let's go through them. If Kyler were to pick Indianapolis, then Daniel Jones, I think, goes up to the top of the list because Daniel Jones would have a chance to be a potential multi-year option. And clearly Kevin O'Connell and Daniel Jones hit it off when he was in Minnesota. He's spoken very highly of KOC. KOC seems like he's still ticked that he got out the door and went to the Indianapolis Colts. But I don't think it's a great option because he would be expensive and looking for a big multi-year contract if the Colts decide to rescind that transition tag. You have Derek Carr coming out of retirement. The complication there is that you would have to work out a trade with the New Orleans Saints, which means you have to have enough cap space to make that trade, and they have to have enough cap space to take him on and then trade him, which is another kind of complication there. Outside of that, Kirk Cousins returning. The plus to Kirk Cousins returning is I think that JJ McCarthy could learn a lot from watching Kirk Cousins run this offense. He's fluent in this offense, and I mean, there's very few people who know it better than Cousins, and he's going to play within himself. He's going to demonstrate exactly how a veteran quarterback operates an offense, not in the kind of wild and out of control, way up and down way that we saw last year from a young quarterback, and that happens. But Sam Darnold talked about how much he learned from watching Brock Purdy play within himself. I think there could be a similar experience there. The issue with that is the ceiling. It's just hard to see Kirk Cousins in his current state, 37 years old, doesn't move very well anymore. And at one time, he was very good at running a bootleg and throwing on the run. There's that play in 2019 against the Detroit Lions where Adam Thielen ends up getting hurt, but he rolls to his left and Thielen's running a deep over and he lets it go. And it's a rocket and it's perfectly accurate to the back of the end zone for a touchdown. I don't think you could get Kirk Cousins on the move like that anymore. And the same goes for Aaron Rodgers, who still can sling it, can still throw the ball extremely well, but Rodgers is going to run Rodgers' offense his way. As you saw last year from Pittsburgh, he's telling his guys, hey, go run this route against this thing, and if you see that, go do that. Like, he's going to run it Aaron Rodgers' way, and you talk about fit within a system. It's like, well, you're fitting yourself to Aaron Rodgers' system, and I don't know that that's the best situation for a young quarterback to watch and develop under Aaron Rodgers when he has the Aaron Rodgers school of how to play quarterback, and he's going to bring that here. And we didn't see anything to the contrary in Pittsburgh for last year, but that's another option. And then after that, what? I mean, Anthony Richardson is not a real option other than as a roll of the dice, as a, hey, maybe you never know. Who am I missing? Russell Wilson? That doesn't seem like it's a serious potential option unless you're trying to get him as a pure backup quarterback for JJ McCarthy. I don't love that. I don't love him in the role of a backup quarterback. I guess he's in case of very serious emergency. But when you start to roll down those options right there with Cousins, Rodgers, Carr, Daniel Jones under a certain set of circumstances where they rescind his tag and he just becomes a free agent and then he's going to the highest bidder. But where are the Vikings drawing from the money to bid for Daniel Jones? I mean, am I missing someone on this list? It feels like if you're aiming for a starting quarterback, that those are the only guys left, with Malik Willis signing with the Miami Dolphins. And I mean, even someone like Jacoby Brissett, I guess you could consider, to me, very much a backup type of quarterback. And I saw today, hey, just going to give myself a tiny little pat on the back here, that I came out of the combine. And if you folks watched the combine breakdown of like emptying the notebook of everything I heard at the combine, the word I used for Mac Jones for what the 49ers were looking for was astronomical. And I saw that Diana Rossini also tweeted today that teams have been calling the 49ers asking about Mac Jones, and they've been saying astronomical. The words first round pick were said to me. I don't know that that's what they're still asking, but it sounds like the asking price is through the roof. So Mac Jones, who I think would have been a fair enough option, and I liked the idea of potentially competing with JJ McCarthy, but San Francisco is saying, no way, you are not getting Mac Jones. He is a very good backup for us, and that's why we signed him to a multi-year contract. So if Brock Purdy gets hurt, he could save our bacon. So then the options are all basically starting quarterbacks. Geno Smith was also the last frontier of, they could get Geno Smith, have him compete with JJ McCarthy, sets a fairly high bar. But if McCarthy takes this huge step, then he could become the guy. I think with any one of these quarterbacks, though, for all the folks who have been extreme about I feel like the extremes don't have to be the case here. It's not if you get Kyler Murray, then you just get rid of JJ McCarthy, you completely give up on him, you never speak to him again, you put him in a locker and you close it and lock it and say, see you later, JJ, after the season, don't ever talk to us again or something like that. That's not, I don't think any of the scenarios is they're just complete. I haven't gotten this impression that they're completely done with JJ. It's over. Forget about him. Under all of these scenarios, except maybe Aaron Rodgers. I mean, if you get Rodgers, you're not going to bench him at any point. You just have to kind of play it out with Rodgers. Maybe you could trade him. I don't know if it was going bad. But if you think about it with Kyler Murray, you have a pretty clear if-then situation. If Kyler Murray plays amazing for you, then you can sign him to an extension. If Kyler Murray is just okay, you can make the playoffs. If he's bad, you can bench him for JJ McCarthy. If Kyler Murray is as awful as some of you people make him sound, which he's not, but let's say he is, let's say he plays really, really bad. Well, I mean, then you could go back to JJ McCarthy after 6 weeks or 8 weeks of development and bring him back in when he's actually had time to focus purely on his game without the pressure of being QB1, without the injuries that he's had throughout the years. And you get a full healthy offseason and in the season to develop. And then, hey, you're 4-6 and it's just not really working. And Murray is the 25th rated passer in the league. Bench him. You paid him $1 million. Who the heck cares? On to JJ McCarthy. The same goes for Kirk. If you bring Kirk back and you are 2-4 and he's struggling to move around and throw the ball, you can bring back in JJ McCarthy. And I look at somebody like Drake May, who I thought that the Patriots handled very well in their first year. Jacoby Brissett played until the wheels came off. Then they said, all right, you've had a lot of time to adapt to the NFL, to see how a starting quarterback does it, to practice every day, which I just think is very, very valuable. And then now you're the quarterback. And if it works out great, then you're in the playoffs and you can win the division. And when I look at Kyler Murray and his career and his numbers in the seasons where he's had a chance, 2 of the years he got the ACL injury in the middle of one season that was going terribly wrong for the franchise, and then comes back in the middle of another season with the ACL. It's hard to look at those and say that's reflective of what he's going to be now. But his most recent performance, let's say since the ACL, 2024 and 5 games in 2025. And this is what I've been doing, is watching them back game after game and watching his game. And I'm making a whole bank of all the different subjects regarding Kyler Murray. The throws to the middle, the throws he turns down, the scrambles, the accuracy when it's good, the accuracy when it's bad, under pressure. I'm putting them all in little folders. So someday, if they sign him, we can have a huge film session here. And I'm not a film analyst breakdown guy, so that's why we don't usually do it on the show. But I've looked at enough to be able to find these plays and talk about them and present what I've found about Kyler Murray, and maybe we'll end up doing that. But if it works out for you, the division, I look at the division and go, Chicago's not perfect, and no move that they've made this week to me says, wow, Chicago's suddenly incredible. They've gotten so much better. Well, I don't know. Losing Drew Dahlman was huge. They haven't made a single defensive signing where I went, oh man, Chicago, like they're the team. I actually thought that they would do better in free agency than they have. Detroit gets a center, but he's not Frank Ragnow. He's kind of just a guy, Cade Mays. And I think he could play, but I mean, he's not Frank Ragnow. Very few people are. They're going to have more likely than not a rookie tackle, which I think the Vikings can take advantage of. The Packers, they need to revamp their line. They need to revamp big parts of their defense. They haven't made mind-blowing moves, and they just lost Romeo Doubs to a big contract with the New England Patriots. It's hard to convince me that with Murray, even in his, not even in his absolute peak, but even in just his most recent style of play, could not get this team into the conversation if things go well for them and their schedule plays out and the injuries play out into that discussion. But if they're not, it's fine because you go back to JJ McCarthy and then you get to find out how much he's developed and see where he's come. Although I think that they can assess that behind the scenes fairly well now that they know exactly what he needs to do to succeed. FanDuel question of the day. I think, I used it yesterday, but I feel like I want it to go back to it since there's been a lot more moves since we last talked, is what team has moved the needle the most for you? As I was mentioning, the Detroit Lions are plus 170, Packers plus 175 to win the North. The Bears are plus 360 to win the North, and the Vikings are plus 600. So, I mean, the Vikings honestly could be moving the needle some of the most in the NFC North, just because of they're getting a quarterback that has a history of being pretty good. And that's another thing that's kind of a tell, is when people say that he is a bust or he's never played what, like, okay, come on. We all know that he has. We all know that he has played well. I don't know that if he's going to be the quarterback or not. The arrows as of this moment, as of 6:30 p.m. Central on the day March 10th, 2026, the arrows are pointing toward Kyler Murray. By this time tomorrow when we do the live show, it could be very different. That's what makes football so interesting. So what is on your mind now that we have some movement? Malik Willis has found a home. Geno Smith has found a home. And a decision is looming next week, although, I'm thinking it could be tomorrow, but I don't know that because Kyler Murray apparently has not been meeting with teams yet and is playing it by the book and is going to have his meetings tomorrow. So we could talk about that. We could go through and look at remaining free agents and some moves that happened today, but let's get to your thoughts. So let me just get the window up here on the screen. There we go. Let's see. Where did Malik Willis go? He went to Miami Dolphins. The FanDuel answer of the day is the Vikings if Kyler signs. I'm curious to see if it moves or how much it moves or if this is as far as it's going to move because it has been plus 700 and now it's plus 600. Jason said, my thing is JJ McCarthy has weapons all over. And if you rank dead last in quarterback play, this is a lot. He wasn't dead last. That was Brady Cook and Shadur Sanders, but he was 42nd out of 45 in quarterback rating. So that not great. With JJ McCarthy, I will continue to say that do you want just to see more JJ McCarthy or do you want the best thing for JJ McCarthy? Because I have a tough time arguing that the best thing is for McCarthy to go into the season uncontested with just a regular backup quarterback and have all the pressure on him again, like it was last year. And I look at around the league, just quarterback play in general and how much time it can take for quarterbacks to get to a spot where they are ready to be a starter. Even Jordan Love. Think about Jordan Love. Jordan Love had 3 years of development behind Aaron Rodgers, and his first 8 games were pretty meh. And then he turned a corner, and people still like to debate Jordan Love. I think we know what he is. I think he's a very good quarterback. He could be very, very efficient, but you could tell that his coach does not fully trust him to let it rip. And people always blame the coach for that, but oftentimes they're right. Like Russell Wilson in Seattle. Like, they were right. Was it Darrell Bevell? They were right not to let Russ cook. Just because he was efficient doesn't mean you should have him throwing 35 passes from the shotgun every single week. And that might be the same thing with Jordan Love. My point, though, is he didn't turn a corner until Thanksgiving in his first year. It takes time for a lot of quarterbacks, and it did not so much with Drake May. Like, he hit the ground running. That happens. Caleb Williams showed improvement. He needs to improve a lot more. Everyone works on a different timeline, and Drake May in particular might just be a freaky specimen. His physical skill is ridiculous. Got to see him up close in those joint practices, and he made a lot of plays that were wow. Even if the Vikings were the better team, there was throws that just blew your mind. Like, he is a physical freak. He is more along the lines of a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes in terms of his physical skill. And Jaden Daniels, with his speed and his running ability, him hitting the ground running, that also was a factor too. But a Bo Nix took some time. We still don't even know what's happening with Michael Penix. Like, a lot of quarterbacks have needed time, and it's okay to give them that. It doesn't ruin your franchise. I know that all of us, and especially me, are always looking. I love to talk about timelines and roster build. It's so freaking interesting. But sometimes with the rookie quarterback contract, that obsession is, well, you need to find a quarterback that can win, and your quarterback needs to be ready to win when he comes out there. Just because you have the rookie contract, as we saw last year, it doesn't mean you just win automatically, because if the quarterback you're running out there isn't ready, you lose. And that's what happened to the Vikings. Let's see. Yeah, well, I can see you guys are fighting with each other when it comes to Kyle. There really is no, to me, there's no Kyler versus McCarthy. This is interesting, though. How would KOC, if they signed Kyler, manage that discussion? My guess is that he would not say, hey, someone's our QB1, but then Murray just takes all the first team reps, and we all just know that he's QB1. These are two quarterbacks who are in way different spots. There really isn't a this guy versus that guy. Kyler Murray is an established NFL starting quarterback who has won a lot of football games and has been to the Pro Bowl more legitimately, not like the Shadur Sanders Pro Bowl. Has had legitimate Pro Bowl seasons. By PFF, he has been a top 12 quarterback 3 different times. We know what Kyler Murray is. It's just around the edges. Can you make it fit? Can you make it work? Can you get the best version of Kyler Murray? Can you manage some of the ups and downs that, and I included this in my breakdown when I did all the numbers of, if you map out his ESPN's QBRs 1 to 100 through the last couple years, I mean, it's up here and it's down there and it's up there. Can you even that out? There are big questions there, but we know what Kyler Murray is, a quarterback. He's got thousands of dropbacks. With JJ McCarthy, he's still learning how to play the position. We don't know whether he's going to be able to fix those things. We don't know what eventually he's going to become. And I fully understand when people say that you at home on your couch would rather just figure it out on the field and say, hey, JJ, just go get him. See what happens. There was a bit of that argument last year of, hey, let's find out about JJ McCarthy. And then when you find out, it's like, oh no, where's Daniel Jones? Because there's the find out that might not be what you want to find out. And if you're the organization, and if you're Jefferson, how do you ask these players? How do you ask this coaching staff to just roll out with someone you have no idea what they're going to give you on a play-to-play basis? We didn't know what McCarthy was going to give, which to me means more time for him is the best option. So, I know that, look, we did find out, you're right. We found out a lot last year that he wasn't ready. And we found out that when it comes to accuracy, yes, it can be fixed, but accuracy is not something that can be fixed on the fly from a week-to-week basis while you're playing and getting hit by Micah Parsons and it certainly cannot get better if you are on the shelf, he played 10 games, which means he missed 7, but even then he actually missed 8 because he didn't even play 2 halves. You missed a half a season. And before that, you missed a full season. When is he supposed to get better? This is my point. You'd rather have him stay healthy for an entire year and actually focus on getting better because it was clear that he was not ready for this. Rach says problem with tanking is this roster has too much talent to truly get into the top 5. We're not going to suck like the Jets or Cardinals. That's completely true. Yep, that's completely true. That even last year, when you had one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL, you still end up with 9 wins and you still end up drafting 18th. Now, after this year, we could talk a little timelines because they're going to get a veteran quarterback one way or the other. After this year, if you feel great about where McCarthy is, let's say just scenarios. Let's say they end up with Kirk. All right. So they end up with Kirk and he plays 12 games and then McCarthy comes in to play the final 5 because they're struggling. All right. You get to the end of the year, you're going to know a lot better. Hey, wow, he made huge progress. And now we can start planning for the next season with McCarthy as our starting quarterback because he really blew everyone away behind the scenes. Well, that's still a good scenario, and he's still not expensive. And even the 5th-year option, if you look at like what those 5th-year options are for quarterbacks, it's not like you have to pay the guy $60 million. So you can work around that, and you can start reworking your just overall franchise roster plan, but you feel good about that, and you're going to go get a veteran backup and see where it takes you. If you feel like he didn't make any progress at all, which is possible, then you end up going to the draft and starting to look at how are you going to get a top draft pick quarterback. Or if you have Kyler and he's amazing, then you're going to just keep Kyler. Like suddenly you have options. If you play JJ McCarthy the entire season and you only have a regular backup and it goes sideways, well, one, you might be looking at a lot of overhaul, whether that's coaching or whatever else it might be. But then you're completely lost at sea, right? Like, what do we do now? You have to draft one, but you're backed into a corner of having to draft one. You don't even have the potential option of a Kyler Murray being your long-term quarterback. So, there is a potential situation where McCarthy takes such a big step forward in the offseason that they feel great about him, and that's up to him, right? But you have to factor the performance from last year as your highest decision-making tool of look at the ups and downs of this, way more downs than ups, nowhere near NFL starting caliber quarterback play. You have to protect yourself there. And you have to try to maximize what you have as a roster. Then you could start thinking about what you're going to do in 2027. And, when it comes to giving him a chance, I think giving him the best, is it give him a chance or give him the best chance? Give him a chance is, all right, just throw him out there and see what happens because I want to see him. Or is it give him the best chance, which means develop behind the scenes like a litany of different quarterbacks have done over the last even 10 years and ended up having success. So that's how I look at this season. Johnny says, what's KOC's pitch to Kyler? Because there isn't any competition in Pittsburgh unless you count Mason Rudolph, which is probably not. Well, I didn't even really mention this, but I know Trapasso did I might pitch that the Vikings got the best grade for their turf. I'm not joking. The Vikings got the best grade for their turf in the NFLPA survey of any team that plays on an artificial surface. They got a B, and I believe it was Pittsburgh that got an F- for their surface. If I'm a scrambling quarterback trying to maximize my speed and athleticism, how do I feel about playing on sod that's going to be slipping underneath me? Probably not great, right? That'd be part of it. I would also, if I'm on that Zoom call and I'm Kevin O'Connell, I'm saying, hey, Kyler, I got somebody on the line here that wants to talk to you. Oh, here's Justin Jefferson. Hey, Justin, why don't you just tell him what it's like playing here for the Minnesota Vikings, right? I think that's a pretty compelling argument. I also think this, when it compares to other franchises, Kevin O'Connell, you guys can say whatever you like. We can say whatever we like. We can look into every bit of data. We can pick apart. They should have run in this situation. Shouldn't have called this play. Doesn't have a good enough system. Whatever you want to say. And there's a lot of reasonable stuff to pick apart there. One thing you cannot question is Kevin O'Connell's connection with his players. It has been incredibly clear from the NFLPA survey and just from being there all the time. And you saw it last year, a team that goes 4-8 and is that down on its luck. If it hates its coach, man, it's going to stay down on its luck. But they were able to turn it around. They were able to have a winning record at the end of the year, which, look, congratulations, right? Hang a banner. But it means something that even in the most tumultuous year that he's had, I think this was tougher than 2023. Still, the players come out and give him an A in the NFLPA survey. He connects incredibly well. He's a great communicator. He understands people very, very well. He understands football players very, very well. And if there is somebody who can connect on a level from a communication perspective with Kyler Murray, I think Drew Petzing, who's cut from the same cloth as KOC, did a great job with him. And that's everything that I've heard or read about Petzing and Murray in Arizona over these last 2 years. I don't think that he is a malcontent that no one can possibly succeed with from a personality perspective. I've not gotten that impression from spending the last month looking into Kyler Murray. But I do think that having someone who really has his back and is really on his side, because, I mean, KOC, he's going to do that like he did communicating with Sam Darnold. I'm not sure that anybody has communicated with Kyler Murray the way that Kevin O'Connell is capable of. So I think that would be his main pitch. It's like, you're going to come in and have a situation with Josh McCown and himself, former NFL quarterbacks who can work with you in a way that no one else has. And I would say, hey, that kind of sounds, well, I'm doing the pitch. So like, hey, that sounds like, some sort of fairy tale land. But Daniel Jones said it in an interview. Daniel Jones said when he arrived in Minnesota that Kevin O'Connell worked with him in ways that no other quarterback had before. And he had no reason to say it. I shot you 99. Says, if Kyler Murray signs with the Vikings, isn't this basically 2024 all over again? But it isn't Darnold, it's Kyler Murray. And thank you so much for the super chat there. Really appreciate that. It could be. It has the potential to be. And that's why I've liked it all along. Because no other option that you can bring up has the potential to be like 2024 except for this. It's a highly, highly talented player with unique physical gifts. Go watch his game against Carolina. Go watch the way that he moves against San Francisco when Nick Bosa is on the other side. The playmaking is remarkable. The accuracy is very, very strong. And, he gets dinged for being really good at throwing from 0 to 10 yards. But guess what the highest percentage of passes in the NFL is these days? From 0 to 10 yards, accuracy, timing, rhythm, all that stuff that KOC talks about nonstop. He has been able to do a lot of it with success. So is it possible it's 2024 again? Certainly. And look, they're not playing as hard of a schedule, I think, as last year. Maybe they could have used that fourth place schedule, but are they playing? Is it the NFC South? I mean, that's a door open for sure to win some games against that division. So, I think that it does check a lot of the same boxes of a quarterback, and we've just seen it enough times. I think he's a lot like Baker Mayfield, a flawed but very talented player who is not at all perfect, but under the right circumstances can succeed a lot. Can you win 14? Okay, probably not. The explosive potential of the offense would be less than it was with Sam Darnold, but it's a lot of the same people. Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, who's going to catch 110 balls from Kyler Murray after watching the tape. He's going to catch a lot of footballs for sure. Can they run the ball well enough? They couldn't run the ball at all in 2024, but could they run it well enough to even out some of Kyler Murray's ups and downs? I think that's possible. At least it's on the table. With the other options, I'm not sure that it's on the table. Rich says, just want this team to stop wasting draft picks on people they don't ever play or plan on using. Yeah. And we need to get more rookie involvement through the year to see if they're any good. Well, they've used a lot of draft picks on players that are veteran players. They've made a lot of trades for players. They used draft capital for day 3 on Jalen Reagor and Cam Akers and Cam Robinson. And I don't blame them for making some of those moves because of where they were at in the circumstances, but that's not a way to build a young core of players who are developing. And you're right that when you see some guys that they drafted signing contracts yesterday, you go, should you have gotten rid of all of the draft picks instead of maybe tried to let it play out? I mean, even like, and you never know what happens behind the scenes. Sometimes a guy just doesn't fit in your culture and you got to move on. But I mean, they cut Kobe King last year and you're spending again on a linebacker and you go, I mean, couldn't you use him on special teams? Couldn't he have been what Ivan Pace was for you? And now Ivan Pace is more expensive. And I know it's only a couple $1 million, but you didn't even really give it a chance. You just sort of, all right, well, we need somebody else right now today. You're out of here. Too many times over the last couple years, that's been the case. Rach, Kyler versus the Rams, 2024 is absolutely nuts. Crazy highlights. Oh yeah. There are games, several games. I mean, the Carolina game last year, I was just watching it, is terrific. There's several throws, and the idea that he can't throw from the pocket is totally wrong. Totally wrong. He can absolutely throw from the pocket. He's not going to throw every time from the pocket, and he's going to scramble because it's one of the things he does, and it will run him into trouble sometimes, which is one of my big criticisms of Murray, is that he runs himself into trouble and tries too hard to make a play. But there are throws in the Carolina game, even this year, from the pocket, drop back, 1, 2, 3, bang, hits a 30-yard touchdown to Michael Wilson, or maybe not 30-yard. I think it's like a 15-yard touchdown. But stuff like that happens a lot for Murray. He's very accurate. So that can be done. Doomer KO, just as a human story, Kyler getting the chance to escape Arizona is beautiful. Yeah. They're not that different from Sam Darnold in Carolina or with the New York Jets. I at least am interested, if it happens, to see what that looks like with him and all the talent that he has in a position where it's a stable franchise, not the F-rated franchise. Chris says going to be lit when the Vikings trade Grenard for Mac Jones. Smoke screen. Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if oh wow, we got some more super chats coming in here. I don't know if the Grenard thing is happening or not. It feels like that went completely dead yesterday, and I don't know if you guys have seen any updates on that. I have not seen any updates on that at all on Jonathan Grenard. Pizza Guy OG, man, you come in with some huge super chats, dude. I appreciate you. Very much appreciate you. Not necessary, but always appreciated. Rach, it would be historically unprecedented to turn around if JJ ever has a season as good as Drake May in 2025. Well, yeah, I mean, that's an MVP season. I think that it's like, I feel the need to want to be very, very fair to the people who haven't moved on from JJ McCarthy, because I don't think it's right to just say, hey, he's not good, throw him in the trash. Otherwise, Sam Darnold wouldn't have won the Super Bowl, or Ryan Tannehill wouldn't have won a conference, or Alex Smith wouldn't have gotten to the NFC Championship game and maybe needed his punt returner to hang on to the football or whatever. There are many quarterbacks over the years who struggled out of the gate and then were able to find themselves after a couple of seasons or after developing on the bench or whatever it might be. So there should be time given to that idea. But I think that if we're talking about what the ceiling is, I saw someone in the chat saying that McCarthy has a higher ceiling than Kyler Murray. I mean, that's just objectively not really possible. I mean, anything, I guess, is possible. But someone of Murray's talent, who was drafted number 1 overall, who has this lightning ability to scramble and make plays and is accurate as he is and has the entire background that he has, Drake May is similar, only he's taller. The playmaking, the arm strength, the raw physical tools. I mean, McCarthy has above average speed on his fastball. He certainly has above average mobility. He has a playmaker's mindset. And I think he was farther behind from a football IQ timing type of thing than we thought he was going to be. But I think he's a smart kid who can catch up to that and run an offense eventually. But your initial impression does oftentimes, unless you're the first, second, third overall pick, it does give an indication of what your ceiling's going to be, unless I guess you're Josh Allen. But even then, with Josh Allen, I think you knew with his raw skills that if it ever really clicked, you could see that in his second season. If it really clicks for JJ McCarthy, I think he could be a winning quarterback. I don't think he could be an MVP level quarterback. That's probably off the table for the most part. Pizza guy or Pizza Gary. I've called you Pizza Guy, but it's Pizza Gary. Sorry. Aren't we to the point where we really need to budget 2 quarterbacks every single year? We plan on having nobody making it through. We like 2 legit starters. I think they actually need to have 3 players on the roster that could play, because you're already at a spot in 4 years where twice they've gone to quarterback 3. They've started multiple games with Jaron Hall. Is he in the league? I don't think he is. And multiple games with Max Brosmer, who I'd like to see get more chance to develop, but it's always possible is not in the league after a couple of years. It happens to a lot of undrafted free agent quarterbacks. So they need a quarterback 3 who can at least come in. This is why, somebody last night was trolling me and said, oh, they're going to get Josh Johnson. I was like, what, really? They did? Because that's a good guy to get. Like somebody like that for a quarterback 3 who's bounced around a little and has started games and could actually come in and play if you needed him to. Vikings Suns Tigers says, I live in Arizona, been a Vikings fan for over 50 years. I've seen Murray play and he regressed because of coaching in the organization. I've seen Vikings drama every season for the last 5 to 6 years. That's the thing that's very hard to evaluate with football. And it's why our conversations have gone on for a month and are still interesting right now as it pertains to the Vikings quarterback situation, because there's so many moving parts to success. I've seen people use expected points added as a stat for Kyler Murray in certain kind of throws. Expected points added requires not one person to do their job the right way, but 11 people to do their job the right way. Expected points added to most people who know data is a team type of production stat. It's not a player evaluation tool. That's why we use PFF. Because they are literally a player evaluation tool. They are grading every single throw. So if you, just for example, here's why EPA is just a non-starter for me as a player evaluation tool. I'm watching a play for Kyler Murray in San Francisco where Murray drops back. He gets a little bit of pressure. He kind of glides into some space and he finds Marvin Harrison wide open 25 yards down the field. And he throws the ball right to him and it hits Marvin Harrison Jr. in the chest and he drops it. Negative EPA. On the quarterback. What more would you like him to do there other than buy time for himself and throw a perfect dart into the chest of the top draft pick wide receiver and he drops it? Negative EPA. That's the issue. That's why PFF started grading people in part. And if you want to read more about it, my book, Football is a Numbers Game, and the history of PFF and how they got to be where they are. But that's why they are grading all of the throws. That's why we're looking deeper into it than just, completions versus, what about the offensive line has to perform and the receivers have to perform and all those things. We have to look a little deeper than just, a stat like that, which is much more of a team production type of statistic. S.E. Hughes, thank you so much for the super chat. Really thankful for that. Said, excited that there's a real chance at Love, Jeremiyah Love, with all the teams that are RB needy signed running backs, Vikings have a legit shot at him. Also put him in the backfield with Murray and JJ Jefferson. Who you're going to stop? It's in terms of most exciting possible offseason. Hey, would you guys trade the first day of free agency being boring for Jeremiyah Love and Kyler Murray? Probably, or at least some of you. But I mean, if we're playing smart GM with guardrails and we're responsible then we're not trading for Jeremiyah Love. If we're all sitting here in our armchair GM jobs saying, you know what would be the most fun stuff? Tennessee is the hard one to get over. Tennessee is the hard one to see them not taking him because they're Tennessee, and it feels like they've always had a dominant run game, and that's what they want to build off of. But they might not, and if he drops there, then Washington is probably the next team up that you would think could do it. Always the price matters. The Vikings did get an extra comp pick, so maybe that could factor in. But if I'm a team moving from 8 back to 18, I'm going to get some stuff for it. I'm not going to say, oh, sure, yeah, just have Jeremiyah Love and I'll just chill down at number 18. It's a long way to go. So is it a 2027, let's say, is it giving up the second round pick 2, or is it number 18 and a third and a second for next year? That's a lot. That's a lot to give up. I mean, top 100 picks, this is what I've really focused on a lot in the draft breakdown of why they've failed, is they just don't ever have top 100 picks. And if you're giving up 2 top 100 picks to move up 10 spots in the draft, there's no value chart that's going to think that that's a good idea. But in the immediate, it'd be a lot of fun. And Jeremiyah Love is very good. And I don't know that Daniel Jeremiah said that just completely pulling it out of thin air. I think he knows a lot of people. So, maybe there is something to that. Justin says, I still think Murray, McCarthy, Wentz is far better than the 2025 room. It's insanely better than the 2025 room. And it does sound like the Jets want Wentz, but does he want to go to the East again? I mean, he's a Midwest guy. Have you heard North Dakota is where he's from? Have you heard he grew up a Vikings fan? And I think his family lives in Indy. Now, his family lives in Indy. Doomer KO, fans will get what they want with Kyler losses in the playoffs with the Vikings, and then wins the Super Bowl with the Rams in 2027. Yeah, I like that you guys are already thinking of the most excruciating possible result. Johnny says, with Addison's comment about JJ McCarthy yesterday, does that mean they're working out together right now? I couldn't really pick that apart. I don't know. I don't know if they are or not. I know that Jefferson wanted to work out with him. Addison should as well, and take an Uber wherever he goes. And that would be a good idea. That would be a good idea, because if your franchise is not totally bailing on JJ McCarthy, and I mean, either way, you want to get routes and reps, and he knows the types of plays they're going to run and so forth. So that's good. And I never got the sense, and if it was happening behind the scenes, that I didn't know about it. So I'm only telling you my perspective from being in the locker room and listening to these guys talk. I don't think that there was a feeling amongst the players of, oh, we can't stand JJ McCarthy. I never got that sense. I got the sense that they wanted him to succeed, and they enjoyed his enthusiasm, and they knew that he was out there trying, but it wasn't happening. And this is, as many people have pointed out over the years, a results-based league. So there was clear, frustration, but I think if any of the players around him couldn't stand him, that there would have been at least some indication. But instead, Justin Jefferson had his back for the entire season and talked about, putting the responsibility on himself to help JJ McCarthy get better. And that's why I keep going back to, this doesn't have to be over just because you bring in a veteran quarterback. Who the heck knows what way it can go? The only thing that we know is that the best way to succeed when you don't have a quarterback is to try more quarterbacks a lot of times, right? Because if Kurt Warner can be better than Trent Green, or if Brock Purdy can be better than Trey Lance, then certainly JJ McCarthy, even if you go out and get someone else, could work out. We've seen players come in and there's off-season hype, and then they either don't fit or they get injured, and then what, right? So there's plenty of chance that McCarthy could still play, and his teammates should certainly have his back, and especially these veterans who know that he's been through so much with the criticism. They know how that is. They've all taken it. They've all been hit with it, and it's very, very hard mentally to deal with, especially when you're a kid. I mean, you're not going to throw your phone in Lake Minnetonka just because you're a starting quarterback. I mean, he's 22 years old. You expect him to not look at Instagram, not look at social media at all during a season, not be any aware what people are saying about him or on TV or anywhere else. I mean, that's impossible for a 30-year-old starting quarterback, but at least they've had years of building up a little bit of thick skin through it. But I think for him, when has anybody ever been down on JJ McCarthy at any point in his life? And then all of a sudden the entire world is coming down on you like fire and hot lava on top of your head. That's not something he's ever had to deal with before. So I think that players really felt for him in that way. And they were maybe even frustrated at how, kind of mean it got about the number 9 and all that sort of stuff, which I thought was totally unnecessary. You can critique his performance and criticize it. Absolutely. But I mean, if we're talking about harmless stuff that a guy's trying to have fun playing football, that's just ridiculous to make fun of. But they know any little thing. I mean, look at Kyler Murray. Look at right now. The guy hasn't done anything. And already, if you just search his name, you're going to see a million people that are declaring that they will burn all their Vikings gear if Kyler Murray becomes their quarterback and he's too short and he plays video games and all that stuff. That's what you're going to see if you log on. So for McCarthy, I think all of that was really, really hard to deal with. And now he's been through it and he's growing and moving on past that and understanding that that's what happens when you're the starting quarterback of a team. But I think that has to be factored in as well to the evaluation. And I think that the players in the locker room really felt that and wanted to have his back because of it. John says, less worried about Kyler than I am KOC playing to Kyler's strengths. Limiting the play package for JJ the last couple weeks isn't enough proof. Yeah, I mean, so this is where I would say, like, wanting people to go back and watch some games from Kyler from last year. This is a pro quarterback who has played NFL offense for years now. I don't think that he's a guy that can't handle a pro offense, because last year they were running a lot of stuff. When you watch the offense, they're running a lot of vertical routes. And this is how Trey McBride ends up catching so many passes. They're running a lot of vertical routes, and then Trey McBride is open underneath. And sometimes I'm watching the film going, Kyler, it's there. Like Marvin Harrison's there or Michael Wilson is there. You can take that shot over the middle, and he's taking the 7-yard gain to the tight end, which kind of does. That's why I made the comparison to Kirk a little bit, because there are times with Kirk where you're like, no, okay. Although, his receivers were not exactly Justin Jefferson, so it might change a little bit there. There are adjustments that have to be made, I think, just to his playing style and so forth. I also think it's a tad overstated. I don't think that you have to go out and implement an entire new system, an entire new offense. I think you just have to craft it to him like it was different between Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold. I think that there's been so much focus on the wrong situations with KOC and his offense. It's been Josh Dobbs, which I think I get it, and I agree they should have run more with Josh Dobbs, just hand it off, played safe. They would have won a couple more games, but it was Josh Dobbs also. So yeah, okay, fine. Like Josh Dobbs, 3-12 as a career starter, but all right, fair enough. And then last year with McCarthy, where I also think he played 2 games and then was out for 5. Then they won the one, he came back, and then they apparently had everything wrong. I'm not sure about that. And then there was adjustments, but it was we are just paring this down to give us any chance to win offense, which to me was not a pro level 17 game type of offense. You can play that with Kyler Murray. I just think you have to craft it to him. And you also have to be probably a bit on the patient side if you're going to be Kyler Murray's play caller, because there's going to be times where he frustrates you, and there's going to be times where he doesn't let it rip into a window that you want him to, or that he bails and scrambles. And, I know Alex Clancy the other night from Locked On Cardinals, he said, yeah, sometimes it looks like he just doesn't really want to stand in there and take a hit, which he probably doesn't. And you don't want him to get hurt, but it's required sometimes in this offense. So you're right. Like, it will take some adaptation, but I don't think it's that they're going to have to completely overhaul the entire thing and just implement this full new offense. Remmer says probably going to have to wait for Hendrickson to sign before a JG trade. Yes, I agree with you 100% that Trey Hendrickson seems to be holding things up. And there was a report today when I heard the word prideful about Trey Hendrickson. I was like, oh no, is this going to take all summer for Trey Hendrickson to find a job? Because clearly Hendrickson thinks that he's on the same level as a Micah Parsons or a Max Crosby, and the NFL does not think that. He's a very good player. He was great a couple seasons ago, but he's probably not worth $45 million to anybody. I agree with you though, because if your team's in that market, you're looking around saying, well, we desperately need a pass rusher. Oweh's off the board. Max Crosby's off the board. There's not that, Khalil Mack went back to the Chargers. What do we do? You're really kind of down to just a couple options, which is either cobble together 2 or 3 veteran players who could be okay, or overpay Trey Hendrickson, or try to trade for Jonathan Grenard. And if you're the Vikings, you're not going to get top dollar until the teams are desperate. If they think, oh, we can wait out Trey Hendrickson, this might be in a holding pattern for a little while. But also, if you're on the Vikings side, you have to make a decision on trading Grenard fairly soon, because you're looking to make cap space to spend on your roster. But hey, look, we've got $20 million in cap space because we traded Grenard. Hey, where is everybody? Where'd all the free agents go? So you don't want it to be like that either. Dennis, they're going to give him a small raise and keep him for Grenard. I don't think that's a bad idea to get him up to the same level as someone like Jalen Phillips, who I think he's an equal or maybe a little bit better than Jalen Phillips, who got $30 million. But if you're the Vikings, here's the question. How much do you want to see Dallas Turner play his spot? If that answer is real bad, you really, really want to see Dallas Turner play his spot, then it might be worth just moving it to get extra draft capital. And look, you start to connect the dots. You move Grenard and get a 2nd round pick. Then you trade up from 18 to 8 for Jeremiyah Love. Okay, I don't know. That seems like a lot. That seems like a fake offseason. That seems like a Madden offseason, but I don't know. This franchise does stuff. They do stuff, and you never know what exactly is coming next. But I've come around to the idea of a Jonathan Grenard trade is not at all crazy, because of the draft capital that you need for the future, because of the cap space that you can create to fix parts of the roster still with what's out there in the second wave of free agency, and because you do want to see Dallas Turner. And I don't think it's as much of a find out if he can play or not. I think last year we found out that he could play. It's how good are we talking with Dallas Turner? Are we talking about someone who's a solid, good starter, but is not going to meet the level? And I was looking at Odafe Oweh, by the way, as an undersized kind of outside linebacker type. Really wasn't until year 3 that he took his big step in Baltimore. So could that be the case for Dallas Turner? But if he's rotating, he's over here, he's over there, you're asking him to try to be Van Ginkel. I don't know if you can really find that out, what kind of pass rusher he can be. So there is a good case for it, but you're right. They might just say, we didn't get what we were trying to, trying to go for. And if that's the case, then you might as well keep him. I mean, if the only thing that teams are offering is a 3rd round draft pick, then I just don't know that that's really worth it. John says, what percentage of castoffs become Baker Mayfield or Ryan Tannehill? The odds are not in JJ's favor. No, they're not. They're definitely not. Quarterbacks who have performed like this in their first 10 starts rarely end up having success. And Baker Mayfield probably isn't the best example, because he was the number 1 overall pick and won 11 games in a playoff game for the Cleveland Browns before becoming the castoff. My point on using Baker Mayfield or using some of these other quarterbacks is that we've seen it before with development time, but he's not as talented as Darnold. He's not as talented as Baker. He's not as talented as, that's why I like Ryan Tannehill or Alex Smith as examples. Smith also was the top overall draft pick, but at least with Ryan Tannehill, he hadn't played a lot of football in college, and then he had shown moments in Miami and eventually had it work out, but he did play a lot of football between the time he got drafted and went to Tennessee to be a backup. The answer is it's probably like a 10%, that if it's over at some point, 15 or 20% that it ends up working out somewhere else or somewhere down the line. But this is a unique case with JJ McCarthy. And I'm willing to look at the injuries and look at how far he was set back and say, you know what? This actually might still work, because this is different than, hey, he played 25 games. It was just bad. The injuries are, a big part of the issue that's set him back. Vikings Suns Tiger says, Murray has rushed for over 3,000 yards. He can move the chains. Oh, his rushing is still phenomenal. I don't think he wants to run every play, but it's a big game changer. His success rate was very high. His success rate, if I'm remembering from my article at purpleinsider.football, looking at his data, his success rate was in the top 10 from 2020 to 2024. And that is one of the reasons, because you can have a play go bad and still turn into a 6-yard gain, and that's a successful play, even if it's not perfect. David said this process by Brzezinski is what the Wilfs want. Develop more young talent through the draft. Make sure that we are not deficient and well-stocked at the QB position, which is the reason, maybe you finished that. Reason Carson Wentz will be quarterback 3. I like the idea of Carson Wentz being quarterback 3, because you know that even in the worst case scenario, he could win you a couple games. The Chargers game was just a disaster. He wasn't healthy enough to play, and it all went sideways. But before that, we were praising Carson Wentz, saying, hey man, you win 2 out of 4. Good for you. That's exactly what you're supposed to be as a backup. If he's QB3 and he's willing to take that job, but the Jets might want him as QB2. I just don't know if he wants to go there. He seemed very comfortable in Minnesota, very comfortable as part of the organization. He grew up a fan. He grew up in the region. Seemed to get along very well with JJ McCarthy. Those two looked like they were connecting pretty well when he was here. So I like the idea of bringing Carson back. And you never know with the amount of injuries, if you might need him to save your season at some point. But it does look like Brzezinski is guiding them the way that they've been asked to guide him. I don't even know what those pre-draft grades you're talking about even are, but they certainly, I don't even know what that is. Is that like NFL.com or something? Look, we're not going to debate which player is more talented or better at football. We're really only talking about, because it's not remotely close, but what we're talking about is whether JJ McCarthy can eventually get to a point, if he has development time, to be a starting quarterback for this team still, which I think the door remains open for that. It's not completely closed. Any comparison of the two is just, I don't know what to tell you. Like you're fooling yourself. You have a player who's been a top 12 quarterback pretty consistently when he's healthy, and when he has good supporting cast, he's downright awesome. And we're talking about someone who, when they came out of college, were the 5th quarterback in their draft taken and had barely even really played in college, much less did something. I mean, he won the national championship, but we all saw it, right? Not Kyler Murray winning the Heisman. So it's just a different story. It's just a very different story. The reason to draft JJ McCarthy was that if he became good on the rookie contract, it could be Bo Nix, and you've got a chance to build a sick team around it and potentially fight for a Super Bowl. Well, Kyler keeps you at least on that track. I mean, they're cutting some people, but they're not cutting everybody. Okay, that's funny. Skull Shadow. Once he comes to Minnesota, he'll be the best baseball player in the state. Can I say real quick, since we're deep into this, I'm in on the Twins. I don't know about you guys. I'm in on the Twins this year. I actually like what they did. They forced Derek Falvey to sell off all the pieces. Then they got rid of him, and now they're resetting, and I think they're going in the right direction. They were scraping down a slippery wall for a long time, and it wasn't working. So I like that they made a change. Dan, can you see the Vikings bringing back Aaron Jones, then drafting a running back? I mean, it's possible. If you're Aaron Jones, is that something you want to do? I mean, maybe, because Aaron is so well liked here and so well respected. And is it the worst backfield if they brought back Aaron Jones and then drafted Jonah Coleman or something, or Emmett Johnson in the second round? Like, no, I think that's okay. It's just, I think with the age, I would be so concerned about more injuries. He's had so many injuries in his career. I would be looking at that going, I just don't know how you do it. Even if it's a small contract, can he make it through 5 games without having an injury? And that's with all respect to how hard he worked to try to avoid injuries. But the first night of the season, he's hurt last year, and then dealing with different things when he came back. The burst was not the same when he's dealing with injuries. So I'd prefer that they get in free agency someone younger and then also make a draft pick as well. Rich, would you be mad if they pick up the quarterback from Arkansas in the 7th round? Green, who had the unbelievable combine? No, I wouldn't be mad at that. In fact, I would go out and buy Madden and use him and develop him into the best quarterback of all time, because that's what I used to do with like Seneca Wallace or any quarterback who had above 80 speed. I would just go. Now I guess they give all of them higher ratings, but any quarterback with good speed, I used to draft him, or I would get the free agent who had good speed, and I would just make him the best quarterback in the league. But you used to be able to do the training camp drills, which was awesome and helped you develop those players. But no, I don't think it's a bad idea. Oh no, Son of Beavers, another fullback is off the market. Patrick Ricard with the Giants. You know, when you find a fullback that you love, you never let him go. You marry fullbacks. You date other positions. You marry fullbacks. And that's clear. Ricard, watching him play is ridiculous. It's like an offensive tackle out there. But yeah, Ingold went to the Chargers. He stayed with his head coach. These guys, they take their fullbacks with them. So CJ Ham, they got to find some way to replace him. I'm not sure who's out there. I'm not exaggerating Kyler Murray's talent. I'm not. Thank you, but I'm not. Luke Fortner signed for $4.75 million. Where did he go? I'm interested in that. I guess it's going to be Blake Brand. I mean, really, doesn't this feel like they're just in a holding pattern? Like they just can't spend any money? Or maybe they couldn't convince Fortner to come here, or they didn't like something about him. But $4.75 million, there has been some deals that have just not been that much money. It's like, okay, well, that one you could have been maybe in on. We shouldn't forget about Keaton Mitchell, though. Keaton Mitchell is out there, and that's somebody I like as a potential option for the Vikings at running back, and the Ravens ended up letting him go. Palm Tree Yeti, if we don't elevate Brzezinski, I think trading up for a running back might be tough to swallow. Yeah, I mean, if you're a new general manager coming in and you're like, you did what? you gave up how much for a running back, and now I don't have my draft picks. We haven't heard anything, and we'll see what happens at the owners' meetings at the end of the month. That's in 20 days or so, at the owners' meetings where Kevin O'Connell and Rob Brzezinski will speak again, and we'll get the chance to talk with Mark Wilf. And if Mark gives us an update there, we'll kind of work with that and see if they're going to, when is the GM search going to happen, what the chances are of Rob Brzezinski, how happy they've been with the job he's doing in free agency, all that sort of stuff. We'll get a little bit of a better feeling for that. But your point is right that that would feel like as soon as Brzezinski talked at the Combine, we all got the sense, all right, they're not going crazy this offseason. And then they release Jonathan Allen, Aaron Jones, and Javon Hargrave. And like, okay, well, this seems like I think I called it the ethical offseason, the get right offseason. If they took a hard turn after solving their quarterback situation and then just spent money like crazy into the future and trade up for Jeremiyah Love, okay, well, you tricked us. And yeah, you're right. You better be the GM that's going to live with this stuff. So 18 and Jonathan Grenard to jump to Tennessee to get Love. That is an interesting proposal because Tennessee needs real football players. They signed a bunch of people yesterday, but they did that last year too, and it was not that compelling. And maybe they'll be able to build around Cam Ward. They would only have to, moving back from 4 to 18 is a long way. Getting Jonathan Grenard, you probably have to ask for even a little bit more because they've been shopping Jonathan Grenard. I feel like the price to move all the way up into the top 10 is always really, really expensive. And if you look at the new age kind of draft charts, they're not as convinced that it's worth as much to draft there, but the old school chart super values those top 10 picks. I kind of agree with the old school chart there because of the value when you look at the total value created by top 10 picks historically versus any other part of the draft. It just blows it away. It's like, I mean, clearly, right? The 10 best players. Maybe something like that if they're willing to do it. Even that feels pretty crazy. Even that feels actually quite crazy. Because you're just giving up so much to move up. But if you're going to trade Gennard anyway, I don't know. I mean, it would be entertaining. S.E. Hughes, thank you again for the super chat. There's 1997 or 18, number 18 overall, number 97 overall, and a third rounder from next year, plus Gennard to trade up. I mean, that's just so much. That's so much draft capital. I think they would do it. I think teams would do it, but it's so much draft capital. Vikings, Suns, Tigers wants Mike Washington in round 3. I 100% on board with that. 4-3 guy who can do a little bit of everything. I don't think you're asking rookie running back to pass protect, but have some explosive plays in there, I think is a good idea. In the third is where I like running backs. I mean, you can still get really good running backs in the second. So if it's Jadarian Price, you probably have to spend a second on it, but third round, I think, is where you get some of your best value for running backs. DLM, has anyone discussed that allegedly Tennessee wants Love? Yeah, we talked about it at the very beginning of the show with Chris Trapasso, but I look at Tennessee's history and think, yeah, I know it's a different leadership group, but aren't they going to want a weapon? Aren't they going to want one of the most dynamic players? Maybe not. Maybe they're going to look at a Reuben Bain instead and try to go defense. But what are you putting? I know they signed a couple of players yesterday. Wan'Dale Robinson, right, for a huge contract for him. That helps Cam Ward. I could justify it to try to help Cam Ward and have those two growing on the same timeline where, you know, you got your rookie quarterback contract, you got your young running back. I don't hate that for them in a draft that doesn't blow you away at the premium positions. The Ravens backed out of the trade? Wow, really? What? Okay, I got to go over and call up Twitter here and find out what is happening. They backed out of the trade? Oh, I don't have my screen share. Let me get my screen share. What is going on? He did not pass his physical. Wow. Diana Rossini of The Athletic reporting that Max Crosby did not pass his physical and the Ravens get their first round picks back. Wow. From the Raiders, the Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade. Wow, they just said backed out of our trade agreement for Max Crosby and will have no further comment at this time. Holy cow. NFL offseason, everyone. My goodness. This is insane. So now what? I mean, Baltimore made all of these moves and stuff. I mean, let all those players go, assuming that they needed the cap space for Max Crosby. Now what do they do? Oh, you know what they do? They trade for Jonathan Gennard. Is that what they do? Wow. Thank you, Crowherd, for the super chat. Really appreciate that. This is insane. Wow. Thank you again, John, for the super chat as well. Not a hill to die on, but why trade for Dobbs then? Oh, you mean years ago? Because they had nothing. My point about Kyler is letting him run a bit is okay with some short passes, not rolling his eyes or throwing his hands in the air. That was never an issue with Drew Petzing and Jonathan Gannon. They got along great with Kyler Murray. From everything that I've understood, they got along well with Kyler Murray. This does certainly open the door. Yeah, and you're right. Don't you think that now they're saying that he failed a physical, but don't you think it's possible that they looked at the trade again and were like, okay, we overpaid. This is too much. And now we're failing his physical. Or maybe he got there and he's got a serious injury and they're like, no way. because Micah Parsons got traded and tore his ACL. So Jonathan Grenard to the Ravens, though, they're looking to deal some first-round picks. Thank you again, Crowherd and Not a Twerk, for your super chats. You guys are on fire today. Thank you. Wow. Now what? Because the Raiders just, loaded guitars, Grenard to the Ravens. The Raiders just spent all their money. Grenard will pass the physical for sure. He did have an injury. This is what happens, guys, when now I'm seeing you guys saying, because I was answering your questions and slowly going down, and thank you. Maybe I should miss big news more often and have you guys hit me with it with the super chats. Thank you, Big Papa. Not a Twerk says Brando will be fine at center. Probably he'll be okay. Yeah, I guess we need like a button that you guys can push that zaps me if there's some big news that I'm just talking right through. Chris says with the way that they're approaching the offseason, it would make sense to try to get a 2027 first for Grenard. That way, if neither Murray or JJ work out, you could draft a quarterback. 100%. 100% agree. 100% agree. That's a good idea. I think that's a good split the difference, because I wouldn't want them to just take a third. You'd rather get the most value you can, even if you have to wait for it, which would be in 2027. Now, if you're KOC, you're like, I don't really want that. I want something to help me right now, right? If you're KOC. But this definitely falls under the category of read faster. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry I fell behind. He'll catch up eventually. Oh, you guys are funny. Behind in the comments. Well, it happens. I try to answer a lot of them when I can. But Grenard, now to the Ravens, does feel like it is extremely possible. And what if they're the Ravens have to be super desperate. They lost a ton of talent. And now the Raiders got to find a home for Max Crosby. But if he failed a physical, that means that the value they're going to get for him just went way down. And so Josh says Jalen Naylor potentially impacted. Well, that's a thing, right? Is that they're just agreeing to deals with the Raiders. Those deals are not signed, sealed, delivered from all the free agents. They're just agreements. So they might have to be cap compliant. They might have to back out of some of their contracts that they handed out. Oh my. There is going to be some downhill rolling of this thing. Yeah, they are in trouble, right? They're over the cap. Brzezinski on the phone right now. Hendrickson to Baltimore could also happen. I mean, yeah. I think that the Raiders now might have to back out of some of their contracts. I mean, how are they going to spin him? You have to be cap compliant by tomorrow, right? So how are they going to spin him to someone else that can get them to be cap compliant? And if you're another team, you're like, I'm not giving you 2 first-round draft picks. I'm not even giving you 1, because he couldn't even pass a physical for the Ravens, and they backed out of it. Do you have an intern that could text you? At the moment, I do not. I did see my phone light up, but I didn't see what it was. Should they get a second and third for Grenard? I think I would take that. 20% chance it's a I want my picks back situation. Yeah. It might have been them. I mean, if you get the guy in your building and you're going through the physical and you find something that you don't like in his knee, you're calling the thing off, right? You're saying, no way. I'm not running him out there and having him tear an ACL when I just gave up 2 first-round picks for him. If that is the case, or an Achilles or whatever else, if they found something that's concerning with his injury history, it's also altogether possible that they made the move and then they went, we shouldn't have done that. That is a bad idea. And we have to recover quickly and try something else. But this is a catastrophic situation for the Raiders to think that they had 2 first-round picks in their bag. And then all of a sudden, I mean, look, if you're another team though, unless there's something severely wrong with Max Crosby. If you're another team, aren't you saying maybe we should call and see if we could get whatever, a second round draft pick or something, send the Raiders a second rounder, because they got to get rid of him like now if they want to keep all their new toys. If they want to keep, I mean, I assume that they would still keep Linderbaum, but guys like Jalen Naylor, guys on the fringe that they signed, they were throwing money left and right. Now I'm kind of curious to go and look. Has FanDuel reacted already? Maybe I should reload this. I think it, no, let's see. Let's see if FanDuel has already moved the odds on the Ravens. Would that move the odds? They're still minus 115 to win the division, and that's a Lamar Jackson stat. What are people saying about this? This is crazy. This is my NFL Insiders list, by the way, on Twitter that I have made. Oh, and I have that's not my Insiders list. That's my regular Twitter that follows Simpsons NFL, which is extremely funny. This is the list. Right here. Free agency. This is from a Ravens reporter, Jeff, I don't know how to say his last name, for The Athletic. It says the Ravens get their 2 first-round picks back, but now badly need a high-impact pass rusher. They have significant needs on both sides of the ball, and they've already had 9 free agents verbally agree to deals and just added 1. Jonathan Grenard. That's what it sounds like. This guy. Here's a random tight end in the middle of all this madness. He's like, this is the biggest deal of my life. And everyone's talking about everything else. The Cowboys traded for Rashawn Gary, but that's not official either. Would they jump back into Max Crosby? The ripple effects are nuts for this. And here's poor Patrick Ricard, the fullback. That was the news you guys were delivering me in the chat, was about Patrick Ricard. That's what I thought the biggest thing that happened today was. And it turned out to be this bombshell that might end up impacting the Vikings, potentially. Albert Breer says this puts the Raiders in an incredibly difficult position. They lose the picks. They have a bunch of deals to be finalized tomorrow under the assumption Max Crosby was gone, and now they may have to turn around and trade him again with the medical question hovering. This is insane. This is insane. Thank you all for being patient until I finally found this giant news item. Oh, good point. DOD. Let's hope that the Lions don't get Crosby. I mean, they got to be making that call, right? They got to be making that call. Brother, we need to introduce you to dark mode. I will never. I'm not one of those people. I'm not a dark mode person. Yeah, the Bears. It's now the division's open for this to happen. Jerry Jones on speed dial. I mean, I don't know. Andy, I do not have PI merch, Purple Insider merch. I'll have to come up with something someday. People have asked me that, and I just have never put effort into that. But someday we'll work on it. Doomer said, and I thought the Raiders were having a great offseason. You forgot they're the Raiders. But this, I mean, how would they have seen this coming? And also, here's, Max Crosby talking all offseason about how, I'm super healthy. And he made that I'm playing basketball video when they benched him. Remember when they wouldn't let him play and said he was injured? And we all thought, that's hilarious tanking. Maybe he did have an injury at the time. Mama, who's on the chopping block for the Raiders, I guess we need to go look at who they signed yesterday. Let's do that. Let's go look at who they signed yesterday. Here's the Athletics tracker here. Let's look at Raiders. Where's Raiders? There they are. Okay, they got Linderbaum, 3 years, $81 million. Naylor, Eric Stokes they brought back. Quay Walker for 3 years, $40. Malcolm Kuntz for 1 year, $11. Nakobe Dean, 3 years, $36. And Kwity Paye for 3 years and $48. That's a lot of guys that they're going to have to call right now and say, sorry, Nakobe Dean. Sorry, Malcolm Kuntz. Yikes. Diana Rossini says, after Max Crosby underwent testing today at the Ravens facility, Baltimore made the decision as an organization that it could not move forward with the deal based on the results of the medical. Crosby will remain a Raider for now as other teams weigh the potential risk that comes with trading for him. Somebody is going to get a deal now for Max Crosby. Wow. Rael says Crosby is overrated. I think he's really good. I don't think his last 2 years have been as good as his peak. So in that way, he might be overrated. Not a twerk. Couldn't they restructure the new guys' contracts to make them work? Yeah, but I mean, if I'm one of those other guys, $248 million was reported. If I'm one of those other guys and they're like, hey, you know, that deal we just came to, something happened and we were hoping that we could just do your deal totally different than what we agreed to. That's a tough sell. If I'm those players, I might be like, send me back. Send me back. I think that they'll find somebody to trade Crosby to. Vikings get Naylor back at the league minimum. That's good. Son of Beavers, wait, don't the Raiders have to spend a ton of money? They do. They do have to spend the cash, but the salary cap is a different story. So with all this spending, how did they structure all these deals? I don't think that they can be compliant with Crosby and $248 million of spending. DLM, Grenard is cheaper, and Max just thought he was about to wear purple. When it comes to Grenard, he is cheaper and a little bit younger, maybe, than Max Crosby. Their numbers, if you put them up next to each other in terms of win rate, like pass rush win rate, are similar, but Crosby is a sack monster. And his peak has been higher. And he's also played for a pretty bad team, where Grenard has played for a pretty good team defensively. Gazinked, why is it always the Ravens with the deal or no deal thing? The fax problems. Yeah, what was that deal? I forget that one. Picking ahead of the Vikings. Oh, after that. Yeah, that was them. That's right. Who could still afford Crosby is a pretty good question. And maybe that's Dallas? That is a pretty good question. Mondo Duke says a lot of Crosby sacks are from the quarterback holding the ball too long. The last, I would say, 2 years in his numbers are less in terms of the win rate, less in terms of the pressure rate. He has not been as dominant. He is thought of as being in that first tier, and I think it's fair based on his reputation, but numbers-wise, he has not been Myles Garrett. He's not been Nick Bosa. He's been very, very good still. Just like Jonathan Grenard is very, very good. Probably not worth 2 first-round picks, especially if he's some damaged goods there. Doomer KO, can the Bears afford Crosby? Well, that's what's a little bit hard right now until the league year starts, of where is everybody cap-wise is a good question. I don't know if the Bears can afford him, or if there's a new contract that has to come with it, or there's so many layers to this thing. Hendrickson to the Ravens could happen. Elvis Dumerville. Yeah. Okay. I remember the incident, but I didn't remember the player. Elvis Dumerville. And then there was a Cleveland fax issue for a quarterback, I think, also at some point, right? Wow. I mean, this certainly opens the door for, if you're Trey Hendrickson's agent, you're calling the Ravens saying, you interested? If you're the Vikings, you got to be on the phone right now to Baltimore. If you're trying to trade Jonathan Grenard, what do you guys want for Jonathan Grenard? Vikings, Suns, Tigers. He's getting older and not at his peak. He can get hurt now. Yeah, that's maybe what they started to think about after they were losing all their players is, wait a minute, we can't afford to build an actual roster. Oh, this is funny. I was just reminded by a friend of PJ Hall. Remember PJ Hall coming to the Vikings? Yeah, Viking legend PJ Hall coming to Minnesota and then failing his physical, and that was it. So if the Vikings are making a phone call to the Ravens, they should be asking for a first-round draft pick, right? I mean, that's what I would be talking about if I'm the Vikings. Like, how about you give us that one of those first round draft picks, even if it's next year's? Yeah, fleece Baltimore for a first. Because Trey Hendrickson sounds like his price is outrageous and he's on the older side. So be on the phone with Baltimore, ask for one of those first round picks. JLG, you think Love will be available? Jeremiyah Love at 18? I do not. I don't think that he's going to get to number 18. But now you're going to use the draft capital from your trade with Baltimore to try to move up. I mean, imagine if this has ripple effects that end up respected Warlock contingent pick for Grenard that can become a 2027 first. Viking Suns Tigers for a first and a fourth. It could happen now. I mean, Baltimore's got to be desperate. I mean, they got to be losing their mind. How are they going to pressure the quarterback? I just saw the other day, Lamar responded to Dan Orlovsky, who had said, like, no more excuses for Lamar Jackson now that he's got Max Crosby. He's like, what? Their roster still isn't that great, and they have a first-time head coach. And Lamar's cap hit is $75 million. Oh, is that what happened, you think? So Lamar Jackson's cap hit is supposed to be like $75 million. And the idea was that they were going to have to restructure or him sign an extension or something to lower that cap hit. What if they're not able to do that? And that's why they couldn't accept the trade. Conspiracy potential there. You're right, Mondo Duke, that Moss and Peterson, there have been plenty of guys that have slid down the draft board, and somebody will. Somebody will this year. It happens every year. Christian Darrisaw and Justin Jefferson were both guys who slid down the draft board. Raiders channels are going berserk. I don't doubt it. I was just on Raiders radio yesterday talking with Q Myers, a friend of mine, and we were talking about Jalen Naylor for like 12 minutes. They were pumped about Jalen Naylor. I don't know. I guess he's the guy who gets axed. Maybe. Or are they able to turn around and spin Max Crosby somewhere else immediately? Yeah, Johnny, I mean, all the free agents that left the Ravens, they didn't work out a deal with Linderbaum. They didn't work out a deal with Draymond Jones. Like, they've got players who all left because they thought they were getting Max Crosby. Mama, why don't the Cowboys want Grenard? I don't know if, maybe. Well, they got some draft capital. Maybe. Raiders are rioting in Oakland. Yes, Adrian Peterson did go very high, but I don't think he went quite as high as thought. It was 7th, right? People thought he was going to be maybe top 3, but I know what he's saying. Like, every year people fall and we're always shocked. 2nd this year and 2nd next year, price just went up. Yep. I mean, it makes it more compelling because where I kept getting stuck was, how do they get the draft capital back from a team if they're trading Grenard to make it worth it? If you can't get anything better than a 3rd, then it's just not worth it. And you might as well just have him play and be really good for your football team and just go forward with your life and have him help you win games. But if you're coming with a couple of seconds, if you're coming with a 1st or something, then yeah, it's much more interesting. TK, 2026 2nd, 2027 1st. Sure. I mean, that's the price that you have to set now. Adafe Owe is a good player, and so is Jalen Phillips. Those guys are in the same bucket, probably a little bit lower than Jonathan Grenard. So if he's available and they're panicking, then they got to pay out. And they would still be getting, I mean, at least a pass rusher for something for less price than they were about to pay for somebody who apparently was wounded. 067 Marines, would you do a 1st round pick swap? 18 to 14, a 2nd round pick and a 3rd for Grenard. Yes, I would. Yeah, I would move up 4 spots and get a 2nd and a 3rd for sure. Yeah, I would do that deal. AP, the Ravens should just trade Lamar to the Vikings and blow up the team. I didn't say to the Vikings. I don't know how they would ever do that with his cap hit and his contract. I don't think that's actually possible, but If you're Lamar Jackson right now, how are you feeling? Because you've had your shots at winning a Super Bowl. You haven't gotten the job done. And your coach is fired. And I think you're probably like, okay, this is a new franchise restart. And they're going to make this big win now move. And let's see how it works. And they've never really got you the best supporting cast on offense. They've had some very good defenses before, but the wide receivers have been questionable at times. There's been some big drops in playoff games that have been costly. And now they pull off this trade and you think, okay, well, this guy is going to take us to the next level. And then it's just not happening. Vikings, Suns, Tigers, the Raiders had the 14th pick. Yeah, the 14th pick. 14th pick. And now they have to trade him for what? Can they even get a second from anybody? I mean, if I'm another team and I know they got to trade him tonight, I'm like, okay, I'm not offering anything for Max Crosby. And I know that he's wounded. Lamar would be a good fit anywhere. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in history. Let's go back and look at the Twitter. What's going on Twitter? Oh, Logan Hall off the. I don't know why I said that. Like I was super shocked that the Vikings didn't get a player I liked, but Logan Hall was one of them that I had high on my list. The Texans. They don't need any more defensive tackles. They have everyone on the defensive line. The Texans are signing Logan Hall. So he's off the list. He was one of the tops on my list. Wait, that's not my list. Okay, Mike Silver, though. Let's see what Mike Silver has to say. He says, what likely happens next, two teams who consider trading for Crosby go back to the Raiders and inquire about trading for him at lower compensation than previously discussed. Trades can be contingent on him passing a physical if the Raiders give permission. Two teams could also offer conditional picks. For example, a first rounder that becomes a third rounder if Crosby were to miss, say, 9 games because of a knee. Presumably, Crosby could also return to the Raiders, reconsider his stance on wanting to play elsewhere, and remain in silver and black. So you're saying that anything could happen right now, basically. Anything could happen. Bottom line, from Mike Silver, this absolutely could be a case of the Ravens being scared away by the state of Crosby's knee. It could also be buyer's remorse with the fails physical excuse, and other teams might view the same results differently and decide to take the risk. Wow. And apparently this person said, if the Ravens trade for Crosby, I'll shave my head, and they shaved their head yesterday. And now Crosby's not a Raven. Well, that's a tough break for them. Never in sports should you say, if this happens, I'll do something really insane and stupid. Because in sports, anything can happen. So don't shave your head unless you look good with a shaved head. Max for a third? I mean, that's probably what they're going to be able to get for him, honestly. Yeah, the Texans, they gave Hunter an extension. I did see something about that. I didn't know what the details were. Rappaport says in January he had the meniscus repair. And it takes 4. Oh, this could be a 3 to 4 months. Interesting. Loaded Guitars trade Grenard to Vegas for Crosby in a second. Too expensive, I think, for him. I mean, the solution that makes the most sense for them is to right now send a league-wide text and say, hello, everyone. We've got a bit of a circumstance over here in Las Vegas. If you wouldn't mind, can you send your best offers and we will ship Max Crosby to whatever city tonight on our private Mark Davis plane to get a physical in your building so you can give us a second-round draft pick still. Because otherwise, I mean, if you're one of those people, now they don't have to get all those deals done. They could just be agreed upon. But if you're one of those players, if you're Nakobe Dean or Kwity Paye, you're looking around going, wait a minute. I mean, especially Kwity Paye. I play that position. What's going to happen to me? And he seemed like he wanted to stay there earlier this offseason. How would they not disclose that? Or did they not know? Is it possible that they did not know that he had this meniscus thing? This is crazy. This is crazy. I think it's buyer's remorse. I mean, you heard, if you have listened to the whole show, then bless you. Wow. But you've heard Chris Trapasso talk about how this really wasn't that favorable. I'm sorry, I keep refreshing FanDuel to see if the Baltimore Ravens odds to win the division are changing. They haven't yet so far. That was the FanDuel question of the day, by the way, is like what team has moved the needle the most now in the first 2 days of the free agency period. It looks like, from the perspective of the odds, it looks like Carolina, even though they're still projected as last, is now plus 400, that they have maybe moved the needle the most in the NFC South. What a crazy development. Jay says this is not good for Crosby. Watch his farewell speech as a Raider. It was emotional. He seems like a good person. I mean, I don't know much about him as a person, but this has to be quite the whiplash for Max Crosby, thinking he's going to start anew with Baltimore, and here we go. And then Baltimore says, nah, actually, we don't want you. Back to the Raiders, and now he's going to be sent somewhere else. I mean, you're right. These people they have families, and they have lives, and you're just getting sent all over the country, I guess. Who knows where he's headed next? But that is the business. That's what everyone signs up for. Like, that's life. From the perspective of just what do the Raiders do here, I think is the most interesting, because they never saw that coming. 0671 Marines says the teams that were in on Crosby likely spent their money already. Oh, that's true. Are we still worried about that cap space the Bears made could still come to the NFC North? Well, that is right. It's not just them. It's also the Detroit Lions as well. Both of those teams were reportedly, at least, or were speculated to be, I shouldn't say, I don't know what specific reports, but were speculated to be interested in Max Crosby. Could the Bears, who moved all of the cap space, as you mentioned, could they now say, oh, hey, actually, this was our backup deal. This was our second best deal. Would you like him? Meniscus is a little concerning. As you guys know, we learned a lot about menisci over the last couple of years even go back to Adrian Peterson, who had the meniscus shave, and then the full repair was JJ McCarthy. Is this the full repair? Because if it's a full repair meniscus, that is quite a long recovery, and you might not be getting the early part of the season of Max Crosby that you thought. So if that is what's being reported, I mean, it would be justified if you get a guy in, you go, wait a minute, you had a full meniscus thing? We wanted every single game out of you. Big Bear and Baltimore let all those free agents leave. Right. They let all the free agents go. That's crazy. NFL Days of Our Lives. Yeah. Big feller, the Raiders and Crosby attempted to hide the injury. I mean, maybe not. It's altogether possible that he had the surgery on his own. Like, you don't have to, especially if you know your team's going to trade you, you don't have to go to them and tell them, here's what I'm doing. When you're away from the facility, you could have the surgery on your own. This does happen in the NFL sometimes. Guys come back and they go, oh yeah, I had surgery. I had this fixed. And teams are like, you what? So it does happen. That's possible that happened. John says, can't they just not pay some of these free agents? They can, but that would also be crazy if that happened. That would be nuts if they just said to 3 or 4 of the free agents we signed, you know what? You thought you had your dream deal in Las Vegas, but now you don't. That would be such a bad look for them. Loaded Guitars, Grenard will be traded in the next 18 hours. Definitely possible. Iconic, ready for the Kyler to Minnesota notification to hit tomorrow at 4. It might not hit tomorrow at 4. Now, I'll be ready. I will not be leaving the home. I will be prepared if that happens. But it sounds like Murray's going to meet with the teams first and then make a decision. Friends of Taz, why did the Raiders... No, it's not the Raiders backing out. It's the Ravens. Yeah. Did I say the Raiders? It's the Ravens who are backing out. Yeah. Doomer KO says Dallas staying with the Raiders, Bears, Philadelphia, San Francisco. Philadelphia losing Phillips. They could use him too. How much are we giving to the Vikings to trade Grenard? Need to decide whether I should stay up all night. Oh, how much time? How much time? Like tonight? Yeah. Jalen Naylor, you're a Viking. Iconic, don't want to trade Grenard. He is very good, and it's not something that you necessarily want to do, trading Grenard. It's more of something that makes logistical sense from a cap space perspective, from a draft capital perspective, and getting Dallas Turner on the field as much as you can. Mad Red, whatever the compensation for trading Grenard and an additional pick required if we send him to the Ravens for Yannick Ngakoue's leading pass rusher in 2020. What was that they gave up? Was that a second round pick for Yannick Ngakoue? And wasn't the Jaguars? I forget what they gave up. That didn't work out too good. Yeah, and they got a third back. They gave up a second, got a third back. Ngakoue, I think, was not what they thought he was going to be. Nathan, it's going to be a real bad look for the Raiders or the Ravens, depending on who's at fault. That's right. If the Raiders knew that Max Crosby had a knee injury and they were like 2 firsts and the Ravens were like, okay, good. Yeah, sounds good. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, actually, yeah, we put him under an MRI machine. But why would you try to hide that if you're the Raiders? That's why I said it's possible that he just wasn't even talking to the Raiders this offseason and just got this taken care of himself and then showed up there and was like, oh, yeah, there's a meniscus thing. Or they could have totally known about it and got him in and been like, it's worse than we thought, or it's going to require more recovery than we thought, or we just spent way too much and now we are in trouble and don't feel like. The other thing that might happen is you could look at, these doctors can look at stuff and say, here's how much longer you have to live with your knee. Here's how much longer your career is going to last with the status of your knee. They can look at that. They know that stuff. They've seen enough injuries over the years. They might have looked at it and said, oh, this is a ticking time bomb. This is not going to last. That's also possible too. Michael, it's been reported that Murray is meeting with the teams that are interested over Zoom. Now, I'd love to know the list. Is it include the Colts? Or is it just, are the Browns in on this? Is there some surprise team? I don't know if the reports have included what teams he's going to talk with. Loaded guitars, how much cap space do we have left? Do you think we just carry over to next year, or is a trade in the works? My understanding about the cap situation right now is compliant is what they are, but not much more than that. I haven't added it all up yet. I figured tomorrow would make sense when they cut people, and then we can get a better sense of where that's at on overthecap.com. I'm sure they've been paying attention to the reports, but it's hard to get a total sense right now of how much cap space they have. But I mean, barely compliant is kind of where I see them for their cap situation right now, which is why Jonathan Grenard being traded would be in the works. They had to make, I think, $45 million in cap space. If we eyeball it and try to figure it out, you earn a few million from Jonathan Grenard or Jonathan Allen. You earn a few million from Javon Hargrave, a couple of restructures, and you might be a few over the cap, but maybe someone has that exact number. It's not a lot though. Otherwise they might have some players. Said height. Please don't let Green Bay get Jalen Carter. Is he on the block? There was a report there. I should be staking out Egan. Well, not if he's doing it on Zoom. Maybe I could see through the window into KOC's office and see if Kyler's on the Zoom. I'm reporting from the goalpost at TCO Stadium that I could see Kyler. I think he's playing Call of Duty. Come on. Mad Rad want the pick back they sent for Kari Vedvik. What if Kyler made each team play him at Call of Duty, and if you win, you get his services? Jordan Schultz said that Baltimore is going to sign Trey Hendrickson. Maybe not a report, but a speculation. Let's go back over to the tweet box to see what people are saying. Oh, this poor guy. Stop showing up. The poor guy who shaved his head. Around 7 per year for Logan Hall. That would have been pretty good. Now we're getting to the part where there's guys making deals that are pretty good. The Panthers get Stone Forsythe. That's not pretty good. Mike Silver responding to someone said all trades are contingent on the player passing a physical. So, but the team can kind of figure that out though, can't they? Schefter says the Ravens have rescinded deals in the past because of issues with physicals. In 1997, okay, that's the deep past, man. Baltimore backed out of a deal with Cowboys safety Brock Marion. That is the very deep past. 2018, they voided a 4-year, $29 million deal with wide receiver Ryan Grant. I don't know that Ryan Grant played in the league after that, did he? I remember looking at Ryan Grant as a free agent, and I don't think that he ever signed on after that. So, okay. You never know, my friends, what is going to happen in the NFL. How is it that how? There's no games, anything. The most surprising thing that I can ever remember happening was the gas mask bong with Laramie Tunsil, who's turned out to be an amazing player, by the way. And just what a strange story. But it seems like every draft, every free agency, there's just something nuts. 97 was they have a history of this back in 97. Okay, bro, they were barely a franchise. But okay, that 2018 is closer, but that's a funny way to frame that. Grateful Dad Grenard in a second for Crosby. No, I would rather just have Grenard. His knee is fine as far as I know. Michael, does Hargrave impact a new team? Seemed like his play was not really bad this season. Does a different scheme help him? I think he could still play. Yeah, especially later in the season when they used him a little differently. He was an impact player. I think he can help somebody. There's going to be tomorrow more free agents that all of a sudden, end up hitting the market, not just Kyler Murray, but other guys to look for around the league. I don't have all the names of guys that are going to be cuts, but they will be out there tomorrow. So maybe that's a new group of players. But Hargrave, I thought if he had a different contract structure, could come back and play, but it didn't seem like he was very happy with the defense from him on Twitter. Go live from the goalpost. I know. I got ahead of the Call of Duty joke with Kyler doing it virtually. He can live stream the entire thing. Height, is it any truth to the Wilfs not wanting to pay more in cash this year? Well, they have used already a lot of cash on this roster. And I think at least the impression that we've got is that the Wilfs don't want to sell out the future. That's more of what it is. They do not want to sell out the future just for 2026. But I also thought that some of the reaction to yesterday was just ridiculous. We see this free agency just started. There's a trade that's been rescinded. There's free agents who are still signing at this moment. Every free agent did not find their home yesterday. And some of those deals were insane. The amount of money that was handed out. And the teams that spent the most money were horrible teams. The Raiders, the Jets, the Titans, they spent the most money. Those teams are terrible. You're not going to match with teams that are willing to go crazy to get back to relevancy. You shouldn't try to go toe-to-toe with them in free agency because they're going to keep jacking up the prices for players who aren't worth it. I think it's a better strategy to play in the set for where they are right now with the salary cap situation. It's much better to play in the second wave. And a lot of times, I'll say it over and over again, those are the best signings, is the second waves. Truckin, Hendrickson is a hand in the dirt guy. Not good against the run. Well, I mean, the Vikings shouldn't be thinking of Hendrickson at all. Or are you thinking of Baltimore? But we know this about the 3-4 because Jonathan Grenard's basically a pure pass rusher. You can have that guy in the 3-4. Loaded guitars. Maybe Minnesota wants to play it safe and trade Grenard tomorrow. Could be. Dennis, you better get a drink of Diet Dr. Pepper. Now that we're into almost hour 3, this was from the wife. And it's as big as my head. This giant, because I do these long live streams, and 1 can of Diet Dr. Pepper is a lot if I'm doing a 3-hour live stream. So I got this big, it's not filled with Diet Dr. Pepper. But if they sponsor the show, I will fill it and I'll drink the whole thing live. I'd be happy to do that. Truckin says like Nick Cross and Brisker for safety. I do too. And that's something that we're still just sitting here waiting on, is what's going on with Harrison Smith. And maybe we find that out tomorrow. Tomorrow feels like a big day that we could find out if Harrison Smith is coming back, because if he is, then they might want to wait until they have their contract situation settled and how much cap space they have and so forth. Logan Hall trucking signed just tonight with the Texans. A'Shawn Robinson could be a guy. Deshaun Hand also could be a guy. You know, there's some players out there still for the Vikings that I want to keep an eye on. Let's do that. Let's end the show on this. And then look, if Grenard suddenly gets traded to the Ravens, then I'll be back live. But let's end the show on this. Let's take a look at the remaining free agents, scroll through, and see what we like, who's still out there after another day. We should definitely do this to see who's still out there after another day. And we know that this is going to change. And some of the deals here are not, I guess, didn't Devin Lloyd sign? Like some of the deals maybe not updated. Maybe I need to refresh and update the Athletic here and take a look. Okay, yeah, I just needed to refresh. So Daniel Jones, we don't know what's going to happen there. Okay. And new deals, we'll look for new deals today that we haven't broken down yet, if there are any that were big today. Oh, Braden Smith, right tackle, goes to Houston. That's a pretty significant move if he could stay healthy. Kevin Byard, I'm curious about him because he had an unbelievable season, but no one's paying. The league has gotten so much smarter, guys, when it comes to free agency. I know like the dumb teams or bad teams are paying out because they kind of have to and they're trying to get relevant, but teams are now looking. Even Nashawn Wright signed a contract with the Jets today for $5 million because no one is saying, hey, you got all those turnovers, you must be amazing. The league has gotten like, turnovers, they regress from year to year with guys in the secondary. So Byard might be struggling. I'm interested in Jawan Jennings. I'm very curious at what his price is. Wide receiver from San Francisco. They are definitely, letting him go now that Mike Evans is on their team. Oh, Reek Woolen, wow. That is an interesting deal from Tyreek Woolen. So there must be something with him from a personality standpoint that people don't like, because his projection from the Athletic was 4 years, $76 million. He gets 1 year for 15. That is odd. There must be something that is with him. But of course the Eagles get the lanky, big, talented corner, and they continue to build up. That's one thing they do really well. They build up their secondary. Romeo Doubs to the Patriots makes a lot of sense as a replacement for Stephon Diggs. 4 years, 68 is too much for Romeo Doubs. What am I going to say, folks? Say it with me. Can I hear you? Draft receivers. Because Romeo Doubs for 4 years, 68 is nuts. To me, he's like a wide receiver 3. He's a pretty good one, but he's a wide receiver 3. That is a lot of money. Dallas Goedert's still out there. We didn't talk a lot about Jalen Watson going to the Rams, but that's a great move. Zion Johnson getting 3 years, $50 million from the Browns. Wow. That's a lot for him. All right, now we got some guys who are available. Kelvin Austin's interesting as someone who could, go through the cracks. 31 receptions last year, a couple of touchdowns. Undersized guy, projection is 11 per year, but he could go through the cracks and get very little. Some folks wanted Kobe Bryant. He ends up signing with the Bears, which means that Byard is probably out. Kayvon Chason, I think, would be a fit here. He had a resurgent year last year. 7.5 sacks. The projections are high for him, though. If they're trading Grenard, I mean, if no one's paying out for one kind of breakout year, yeah, Nashawn Wright goes to the Jets. Oh, $3.5 million. So no one was really buying his interceptions. We didn't talk about this. Anzalone is now out of the division. That's good for the Vikings. He's been good for them. Travis Kelce came back. Noted fellow podcaster, Travis Kelce. Jadeveon Clowney, I'm not that interested. We'll see. The guys that have Raiders next to him, we'll see if they actually do. Kevin Zeitler, man, the guy just keeps playing awesome, and then no one wants to pay him. But Brisker, I'm interested in. Deshaun Hand, I'm interested in. Deshaun Hand, not like a sack artist, but is definitely a run stuffer. 6'3", 300. kind of a Harrison Phillips type. Brisker has had some injuries and is known as more of a blitzer and a run defender, but I do think he's a dynamic player. Nick Cross, same kind of thing, box type defender. His projection is 3 years, 21 million, but this is a huge number here. 24 years old. You could continue to develop him. Rashad White still out there, didn't sign today. A lot of kind of bounce around guards. Maybe they get somebody as a backup. Vera Tucker got a huge deal today. Joe Flacco. That's the backup option. Joe Flacco. Jonah Williams could be a swing tackle. I don't think he's that great, but he could be a swing tackle option, potentially. Jawan Taylor, he should get a job. I don't know if he's a starter, though. Greg Van Roten, every single year. Roger McCreary, kind of interested in him. Yosh Nijman is a good swing tackle. We did the Cam Robinson thing. Jalen Hawkins, the safety from the Patriots. The projection on him is 2 years, $12 million. I'll take that. Kobe Durant from the Rams. His projection is very high. He might be more of a backup. Sebastian Joseph Day is still out there. Now we're like deep into it. Emmanuel Wilson hasn't signed anywhere. Okay. He might still be an option. So there you go. Nick Scott. Hey, Xavier Woods, old friend. Bobby Okereke is a pretty good player. Wonder where he lands. Kareem Hunt. I made a joke today about the running back situation, and people got upset. The joke was that the Vikings there's going to be so few left that the Vikings are going to have to pick up like Terry Allen or Roger Craig. And people were like, Isaiah Pacheco's not any good. Because I think I was talking about the Pacheco going to the Lions. Okay. Christian Kirk, I think, has some injury issues. I'm not sold on that. But it is curious what they're going to do at the running back position. Because there's just not a lot left. Right now, losing Naylor is projected as a comp pick. But my issue with trying to project comp picks is that when you sign players, then you lose the comp picks. So then we're trying to do some formula that we don't know. Okay. What a night. What a night. Started out with some Geno Smith and some Jeremiyah Love discussion, and it ends with one of the craziest things we've seen in NFL free agency ever. Or it ends for now. The rest of the night, I'm not going anywhere. If something changes in the NFL, if there is huge news in any way regarding the Minnesota Vikings, the live show will jump right back into action and we'll be back here breaking it down. If not, then the plan is to go as usual tomorrow evening. We might have a quarterback situation in the middle of the afternoon. Whatever it's going to be, I'm not leaving the house. I'm not going anywhere. So as soon as news breaks for the Vikings, this is where I will be, and I hope to see you guys there as well. This is another really fun show. I feel for a situation where the Vikings have done literally nothing, we have had a lot of very interesting discussion and developments in free agency. So I appreciate all of you guys for that. And again, keep your eyes out for any breaking news. Emergency pods will happen as soon as anything goes down with the Vikings. PurpleInsider.football is the newsletter if you want to go check that out. And yeah, so thanks for everybody's time, and I will see you either very, very shortly or maybe probably tomorrow, but I'm not sure when. So keep your eyes out. Do a better job than me missing the big news for like 20 minutes chatting on answering your questions. It's being thorough, my friends, but I guess I do need to keep Twitter up on I need one of those setups that's like 19 screens. So I've got Schefter on a screen, Rappaport on a screen. Anyway, okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back at some point. Just not sure when. Football.